Session for February 17, 2020. Linda, would you call the roll?
Dora,
Here.
Cummins,
Here.
Scott,
Here.
Fritz,
Here.
Manetza.
Here. Our first item of business for this work session is a presentation by the Board of Light and Power on snowmelt solutions.
Good evening, Council. Thank you for the opportunity that we have this evening to come before you. I'm going to actually turn the meeting over to Eric Booth, who's our power supply manager. Him and his team have been investigating your snowmelt solutions or resolution of both interim and long-term. And I think some of you were at our work study session last week and seen the presentation. But essentially the same presentation that we gave the board last week to just discuss and put before you what we think the interim and a potentially longer-term solution is for snowmelt. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Eric and let him give the presentation.
Thank you, Dave.
This is going to be tough. The pressure's on because 3 of you have already seen it, so I promise I will try to make it entertaining for the 2 that haven't. So here's a picture of the downtown area. This picture was taken on January 19th, 2019. Unit 3 was in operation. The snowmelt system was functioning. And we've included some historical photographs, not because I like to creep around downtown in the early morning hours, but just to show people that snow does accumulate in the streets. The sidewalks usually do a pretty good job staying ahead of it. But I've got a feeling when we get into the transition, we'll hear, hey, we had never had snow in the streets before, and I just want us all to know we did, but that doesn't mean the system wasn't adequately designed. Actually, it's a really good system. It's pretty robust. Can you turn it, Ashley? Thanks. So the design criteria for the snowmelt system is 126,000 square feet of PEX tubing. Just shy of 80,000 square feet is on the streets, and just a little less than 50,000 square feet is for the sidewalks. The energy load is 11 million BTU per hour, so that's the design criteria. We supply a water temperature of 100 to 110 degrees for melting mode, and our return temp is generally 90 degrees. It seems like you'd lose heat going underneath the river, and that's what I thought when I first started studying the system, but the heat loss is really minimal. In fact, GMB's estimated, and they're not far off, that it's less than 1%, and that's largely due to the fact that the transmission lines are insulated underneath the river, and then there's an insulating factor of the lines themselves. We circulate about 1,100 gallons of water per minute at 60 psi, and this last bullet point's really critical. It's going to be important as we go forward. So the heating loads are designed for 15-degree outdoor temp and a 10-mile-per-hour wind, and wind really is a significant factor on how well the system can perform. And this picture does a good job illustrating that. So that was a really, really cold morning. That was March 5th, 2019. Sidewalks, again, did a really good job keeping up. It just takes a little while for the streets to catch up. Okay, Ashley. So why are the sidewalks clear but not the streets? So the design heating loads 100 BTU per square foot hour for the sidewalks and 80 BTU per square foot hour for the streets. So the system was designed based on the higher heating load for the sidewalks, and the concern was pedestrians slipping on ice. You know, they're walking as opposed to people driving on the road. This picture was taken on November 26, 2018, when the aux boiler was providing 140-degree water preheat exchanger. So it was only actually supplying about 85 degrees Fahrenheit to your system, and it was doing a really effective job on the sidewalks, but you can see the streets were taking a little while to catch up. So from those pictures, people might be wondering, well, geez, our snowmelt system doesn't work that good. Well, I think you got to put it into context. The snowmelt system works, honestly, it's outstanding how well it works. This is a picture of Washington to Columbus. They were taken at the same time. That was November 12th, 2019. You can see Washington Street. The streets are starting in their melt. They're doing a good job melting the snow, but you can see from looking at Columbus, we were getting pounded. We were getting a lot of snow. That snowmelt system works really well. Next one. So here's a comparison of Washington Street to 2nd Street. This is November 7th, 2019. Again, Unit 3 was operational, and that was a really icy morning. In fact, that dude in the picture was wondering what the heck I was doing taking a picture at 6:30 in the morning of streets, which is funny because he was running up and down skating on the ice, so he was out there having a good time. But you can see Washington Street is bone dry, and those were taken at the same picture, and that was a really icy morning. So there's been quite a few evaluations conducted, not just in the past year, but really since the system went into service. In 2012, after the system had been in service for a couple of years, the city wanted to try to get more data on if they could just predict how well the system would keep up under what conditions. And so there was an email from GMB to the city where they made a couple key points. One of them was the data correlating to the surface temperatures necessary to melt snow falling at certain rates. It's not available directly, and it kind of makes sense when you think about it, because I mean, I'm from the UP and our winters are fairly consistent, but your winters are wild. I mean, you have a winter like this year where there's not much, and then you get a winter where it's just ungodly. There's limited data on what snowfall rates are expected from climatic and weather databases, and there are only guidelines on what snowmelt heating loads and BTU per square foot hour are recommended. So the range of the heating loads recommended varies widely, just as the weather, and that's going to be important when we start talking about what are the annual costs going to be under this new system. Now in 2013, the city asked for a proposal from GMB to develop a supplemental redundant heating source analysis, and the reason for this was Unit 3 tripped offline. The system was not designed with a redundant heat source. Now fortunately, you guys got some really creative folks at the steam plant, and they were able to solve the problem by routing the auxiliary boiler through the DA and valving in the scrubber reheat section, even when Unit 3 was offline. So they were able to kind of bypass the system with the aux boiler and still give you heat, even if Unit 3 wasn't running. So based on that solution, that redundant heating source analysis was never conducted until 2018. So here's the results from the 2018 study that the city had GMB do, and it was a really detailed, and it was a good study. And it evaluated three main options. One were gas-fired boilers, and they identified that as the least expensive and easiest to install. They also looked at combined heat and power, which would be similar to what would happen if we coupled this system with engines. And then they looked at heat pumps, which was kind of interesting. Now the heat pump would need a supply of water of 40 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit, which isn't really an inexpensive source of water during the winter. So they ruled that out pretty quick. So the recommendation based off their high-level analysis was 3.6 million BTU per hour boilers. And so if that's the road we went down, we would need additional recirculating pumps, expansion tanks, since we're going to a closed system, and new controls. They also looked at requiring a new facility to be built. The reason for it was the boilers were fairly good size. They did take into account the possible future expansion, the sidewalks along Harbor Drive that the city was looking at, which is about 7,100 square feet, and would have needed about 700,000 additional BTU per hour and circulating an additional 70 GPM per minute. That's really not a big deal, and we've incorporated that into our solution as well. So the cost, if they could use an existing downtown building, was about 1.45 million, and I know these are big numbers, and they're not, as we get to the final results, not as scary as everyone originally thought it may be. They did look at the downtown depot building, but they said the basement's not big enough, the clearance heights aren't adequate, and they didn't really identify any other sites, any downtown sites in the study. So they said, well, if you have to build a new plant, that's going to be about $2.5 million. And initially that's what they started with. They said, we really can't find another site, so this might be what you have to do. The annual operating cost for this system, again, keep in mind the winters are all over the map, so all they did is just take an average. $166,000 per year for the current system and $177,000 if it expanded. And that was based on $5.55 per MMBTU for gas. At the Sims plant, and we do use gas, and we use a lot of it, especially if we lose a mill and we've got a fire on gas. It's about $4.50 is what our costs are. So they did have a little bit of flex in there for rising gas costs. So a couple key points that really stood out is the operating costs were based on the average climatic data for Western Michigan and can vary greatly from year to year, and you'll see this in one of our later slides, depending on weather. But the underlying point was the point that kind of stuck out to us most, and it was how the system is operated, and we wanted to evaluate that a little further. They also looked at filling the system with glycol, but they got a cost of about a little over $500,000, and based on the amount of volume that was needed, they felt that the cost would be too significant and you wouldn't really get the benefits from it, but it's nice that they at least evaluated that. So after we recommended the closure of the Sims Power Plant, we came to the board and we said, for the last couple years of operation, if Unit 3 was to go offline, we feel fairly confident the aux boiler can do a decent enough job and keep up. What we didn't know at the time, and we told the board, is, look, we don't know if this is going to be an acceptable solution during the transition or even longer term, and we're somewhat doubtful it is, because it is a 40-year unit. It's oversized, it's a steam boiler, we need a hot water boiler. But we did put the necessary investments in just to get us through the last couple of years, and I'm glad we did, because Unit 3, we lost it last winter, and so I'm glad we had the aux boiler, because we need heat in the building too. It gets cold in there if we don't have heat. So when we went down the road of looking at what our next round of generation could potentially be, we started what we call the project definition report, and one component of that report was having another engineering firm look at what is an acceptable transition solution for snowmelt, and can we design it in a way so that any money we spend in the next 3 years gives us a lot more than 3 years worth of benefit, gives us 15 to 20 years worth of life out of it, and can be integrated with a new facility if we decide to couple it. At the time, we didn't know how feasible that would be, but after visiting some sites, it's much easier to accomplish than we originally thought. So here's what Burns and McDonnell recommended, and they reviewed the GMB report as well. They said, look, you know what, try to use that existing intake structure, because at $2.5 million, if you got to relocate, you've got pilings in a new facility. If you locate it on the south end of Harbor Island, you're just talking a lot of expenses that you may not need to do if you can couple these properly with the engines, if that's what you end up doing in the long run. So same thing, install new boilers, boiler pumps, and any auxiliary equipment necessary. But the one thing that they did tell us is, look, you might want to take a hard look at the structural integrity of the existing intake building. Now, if you go with Burns and McDonnell's recommendation, you're not going to be able to fit these boilers in, but see if there's a solution where you might be able to. That may really substantially reduce your cost. Now, to Burns and McDonnell's credit, they're an engineering firm that builds 500 megawatt plants, not 3 city blocks of snowmelt. That's really not their thing. We wanted them to look at it while they were developing the project for the island, but that they were never our intended engineering firm to design snowmelt. So they provided their report in October 2019, ruled out the aux boiler right out the gate. Age, reliability, design, conversion costs, none of that money would have provided any real long-term benefit. It would have just been a Band-Aid, and we would have spent a lot of money for the Band-Aid for the 3 years. Their recommendation was 3 medium-sized boilers, very similar to GMB, with an N+1 redundancy in case you lose one. You don't want the system failing. We would place it outside of the intake structure due to space limitations and weight. Their estimated cost, so GMB's, if you take yourself back, it was about $1.3 million. Burns and McDonnell came up with almost the exact same number if you can reuse an existing building. That's why that component is so critical. So I don't want to steal any of Tom's thunder. We did bring Tom Kingshaft from Progressive AE in, and I'd really rather have him talk about the design. They put a lot of hard work in it. We really like where it went.
So we came up with a design that uses 5 auxiliary boilers, small, low-mass boilers. They're about 97% efficient. They work really well with snow melt systems. And we could fit them into the existing intake building, use most of the piping, reuse the main pumps, air separators, and a lot of accessories. The smaller boilers have a life of about 15 to 20 years. Our first thought when we went in there was to see if we could fit a Johnston boiler in there, because that's a boiler that would have a longer life and could be reused later on, and it won't even come close to fitting inside the building. 1 boiler would be a problem, much less 2 boilers, so you would have backup. The boilers that are here could be either reused in place when the permanent system is done, or relocated to a different location. These boilers have a 15 to 20 year life expectancy, and they're a very nice solution for this, and they're very efficient to use. Next slide. This is a layout. It's showing the use of the existing building. We have put 50 pounds in a 30-pound can in the existing structure building, but it fits. We have the safety margins we do. We have the egress means and everything else in the building. I would say 3/4 of the large piping that's in there is being reused. The other stuff isn't being reused. We have redundancy in this system, so 4 of the boilers would be able to handle the snow melt load in the melting mode if one boiler went out. So we have 1 boiler backup in this system. The boilers that we're planning to use here are low mass aluminum, cast aluminum castings, and they have clearance. They're like, I would call them a light industrial boiler, but they're really kind of suitable for this use. And one of the reasons is they're made to work with very low water temperatures. One of the things that Eric didn't mention is when we looked at this, the first thing we considered too is converting it to a closed system and adding glycol. But adding glycol to the system would have meant a heat exchanger, and we would have lost about 8 or 9% of the system efficiency by doing that. So we decided it would be best not to do that. Okay.
So we did bid out the project. It was competitively bid. Bids came in $953,000 to $1.3 million. So quite a big reduction from the 2.5. That doesn't include the water and the gas lines. The high bids that we got were pretty close to the estimations by GMB and Burns McDonnell if we could use an existing building. So that all the work we put into reevaluating that was really worth the effort. The labor costs were a pretty significant amount in the proposals we received, and I think the proposals were good. There's nothing wrong with them. But it is a pretty simple design, and we do have a steam plant staff that works on much more difficult projects. So we are taking a little bit of look at some design changes that we can make to reduce the costs until a more permanent solution is developed, whether we maintain that structure in the long term or whether we don't, if we decide to incorporate it into the new facility. But given the fact that the design is so simplistic, we wanted to evaluate and cost estimate what it would be if we ended up doing the work ourselves. And that wasn't what we had originally intended, but it is a pretty substantial savings, as you'll see in a minute. So we have a licensed electrician, we have an instrumentation and controls technician left at the steam plant. We do a lot of work with Beist Electrical on much more complicated projects in the steam plant. I think there's some significant money that can be saved there. We would have to hire out some of the items. We're not going to weld, and we don't have a boiler's installation license. We don't have that, so we would have to hire out some of those duties, and we would probably have to work more closely with the engineering firm to procure the equipment. But the one thing we can avoid is we are tax exempt, and so there's some savings there, and we don't have markup when we buy the stuff. When a contractor buys the equipment, there's markup as you'd expect. So if we perform the majority of the work in-house, the current engineering estimates is $750,000. And that, again, that doesn't include the cost to install the water and the gas lines. So where we left it with the board is we said, look, let's wrap this up. We've done a lot of studying over the past 2 years. We've had multiple set of eyes looking at this. It's been checked, double checked, triple checked. We feel really confident in the solution that we're proposing. We're prepared to go forward with it. But I wanted to talk to the board a little bit about the annual operating costs because I know that might be a source of stress for some downtown business owners. So the historical annual operating cost when Sims 3 is in operation has been all over the map. It's been as low as $24,600 in 2016-2017 winter. I actually think it's going to be a little lower. I think this year will be the record low year. It depends on, I might have just jinxed us all. We may be in for a rough February and March. It's been as high as $108,000, and that was in the 2013-2014 winter. So there's really no good way to say this is what it's going to cost you every year. If you looked at the annual average operating cost, high to low, everything in between, it's $50,500 per year. So we took the annual operating cost based on 2,000 hours of idle mode and 500 hours of melting mode, and we got $126,000. Now it could be way lower in idle mode and way lower in melting mode, just depends on how hard our winter is. But all we did is take the average from 2010 to 2018. Comfortable with Progressive AE's design. It's supported by the 2 previous engineering studies, but I think the big thing for me and my staff is every dime we spend, or just about every dime we spend, gives us the ability to utilize all this equipment in a long-term solution, so there's no money wasted. This is all an investment, not just in the next 3 years, but even past that. And what's really nice about it is by segmenting it this way, if there is a failure of one piece, or if good planning is done, you're not in it for all 5 boilers in one shot. You can step your way into these, so you can, it allows you to have a much more sustainable snow melt system 15, 20 years down the road. Maybe you guys will be on the council. I'm not so certain. I'll still be working 20 years from now, but it allows the people coming in behind us to manage the system and maintain it and keep it going. So we really took our time, and we probably spent a year on this one project. We got many others that we're working on to make sure we do the right solution for the sustainability of this system, not just picking a path and going down it and saying it's good enough for now. So actually, if you can go to the last slide. So our recommendation to the board this Thursday is going to be to approve a budgeted amount of $750,000 so that we can start procuring equipment and get it going. And it is going to take us a while to get this done. When we jobbed it out, it was about a 5 to 5.5 month project. We think we're all into that ourselves. It's going to take us probably 5.5 to 6 months to get it done, but it's nothing more complicated than we do on a normal. In fact, actually, it's a lot easier than a lot of the work we do on a normal basis. So if there's questions, happy to take them, but I don't want to take, I appreciate the time you guys gave us. I hope you're happy with the results.
Okay, thanks, Eric, and I can see that there is a lot of very careful thought and a lot of very logical decisions and all the steps that you've taken to get to this recommendation. We all knew that it would cost something, and it would cost more in operating year-by-year cost. I think that's probably where a lot of our concern will be going forward, although at least we have an achievable goal. We set out a goal to make our snow melt system work through the transition and beyond. Sounds like you've come up with something that can certainly work during the transition and probably beyond. So appreciate all that.
Thanks.
Any questions for Eric?
No, I just want to say thank you for your hard work on it, and
Thanks.
glad to
Appreciate
hear
that.
we're moving forward. I was one of the members on the original for the snow melt system and that, so it's good to hear all this good things about it. So thank you very much for your hard work on it and letting everybody else know out there, because we're live here now, so everybody can hear what you're talking about and seeing it. So,
Thanks. I wasn't nervous before, but I am now. Thanks.
You did fine.
but you did fine, and I tell you what, the people at home at least have an idea that we will have snow melt yet.
Thank you.
Just want to tell you, I guess, expound a little bit on the recommendation here. Our board does meet on Thursday. We're meeting with you after that meeting, but at that meeting, our anticipation is that we do bring this recommendation. They did see this as well. So as long as there's no difficulty by the board or the council on the path forward, our goal is to recommend to the board that we take all of the costs, the $750,000, incorporate those into our long-term budget for the capital needs of the facilities that we build there, and then we would work out some sort of, between now and December when this, or November when this starts, that the board and council then would get together and figure out how to share the cost or develop some sort of thermal rate that we would then bill back to the merchants in the city on to pay for this. But at this point in time, our goal is just to go forward, get the work done, make sure that we have a system in place for next year, and then in the interim, I guess we've said to Jerry and others that now it's up to you guys to decide how to get this thing paid for. But at this point in time, I think our recommendation is just to keep moving forward as long as that's okay with the boards.
So is the intent of BLP management that this would be a part of the notice of intent on the bonds?
The snow melt system is included in the project listing for the intent, the notice of intent for the bonding.
So then
and our intention is that whatever facilities we will have a bond issue.
Yes.
For some facilities on the island, and this would be included in that, and then billed back in some fashion. We still think there's a good opportunity for coupling this system with potential generation on the island. We're still evaluating that, but this system is, as Eric said, is fully capable of coupling, and it's really not a big deal. So we think that this is the right equipment, and it will facilitate working in conjunction with something else if we do decide to do that, and this is included in the bond project. So that's our intention, and then at some point in time, we'll agree on how to recover that cost from the users of the system.
Yeah, I think it would be wise for Jack and yourself and possibly Carolyn Taylor and Jeremy Swiftney from DDA and Pat and myself to sit down as a group and
Yeah.
at least get started talking about how these costs are going to be allocated, paid for, who's going to bear what cost, and the path forward. As far as should this get done, it sounds like this is the best deal that anybody's proposed yet, so I don't see why you would not.
Right, I mean, this is by far a lot better than anything else that we've seen to date, so, and a lot less costly, so I think we've arrived at the best solution. Now we just gotta move forward and then figure out how to allocate the costs appropriately at some point in time, so.
Okay. Anything else from council? Pat, anything from you?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you, Dave. We have 4 minutes before our council meeting. Amy, would you like to come forward and start on presenting the fiscal year 2020-2021 capital plan?
Yes, good evening, Amy Bessinger, Finance Director. So tonight I brought before you the first draft of the capital plan for the city for the fiscal year 2020-21 budget. Staff is in preparation of putting all the information together, so we wanted to start giving it out to you so you don't have it all at one time. So this is for your first draft review consideration, for you guys to take a look at the details, what staff is proposing for projects and any capital purchases for the coming fiscal year, as well as notes for the current fiscal year and where those projects are. I made some notes on the first page of the spreadsheet, so that way you could see if we were, we had some acronyms in the spreadsheet, so I wanted to detail those out for you. So if we're applying for grant funding, what those meant, and things of that sort. So I tried to note throughout the document where we're applying for outside funding to help ease the tax burden for any projects. So we wanted to give you that information as well. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time. As we go through this, we'll continue to look at the document and look at the details during the budget process.
Okay, and tonight we're just simply putting this in front of us.
Yeah, tonight's just putting in front of you for a review and consideration for moving forward with the budget.
Any questions for Amy at this point?
Not right now.
Think you might have? There will be plenty of opportunities to ask these questions. We'll be having
Absolutely.
work
Yeah.
sessions and such. But thank you for all this work. Anything
Thank
else? Well,
I think this is officially the honeymoon.
okay.
Yeah.
I'll tell
Probably.
you. Usually, if Jim were here, we'd just be getting started and
Get right into
it'd
it,
be a
yeah.
while.
The next plan will be to, we like to give this to you in digestible chunks, so you have this, and it's a fairly manageable document. Then next we'll come to you with the fee schedule in a couple weeks, so you can start looking over the fee schedule before you get the big meat of the budget just before the 1st of April.
Okay. Well then, I guess,
Yep.
thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes our business for the special work session, and I'm going to close the special work session, and in 2 minutes, we'll open the regular session.
They're gonna pay for it and then slowly bill us. I like that.
Well, yeah, with some added interest on top.
All right.
No.
Yeah. Well,
Wait a minute.
We'll just take them
What
over.
is that nonsense?
Welcome, everyone, to this regular city council meeting for February 17, 2020. Linda, would you please call the roll?
Dora.
Here.
Cummins.
Here.
Scott.
Here.
Fritz.
Here.
Manetza.
Here. Our invocation this evening is by Hans Bernard of the Robinson Baptist Church. Please rise and stay standing for the Pledge of Allegiance following the invocation.
Let us pray. O Almighty God, your superiority is not deterred by the disdain of a population, neither is your supremacy dislodged by the disbelief of people, nor is your sovereignty displaced by the disregard of persons. All authority derives from you, and to discharge of your ultimate purpose have you distribute prerogatives to men to legislate, to arbitrate, and to effectuate. Today we celebrate President Day, remembering that in our marvelous history, you have displayed your power by placing presidents at the realm of our nation. We are thankful, and we pray for the one who is executing authority over our nation today. And these leaders who deliberate this evening depend upon you for insight, objectivity, and fairness. Disregard, O Lord, their personal disposition. Dismiss any partisan distortion that may motivate them. Discount any preference that may distract them. You have said that the heart of the king is in the hand of the Lord. May you display your own distinction for the welfare of your people and the glory of your name. Amen. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, we have an appointment.
This is to appoint Ronald Strang to the Cemetery Board with a term ending June 30th, 2023.
Do I have a motion?
And so moved.
Motion by Fritz, second by Scott. Any questions on the motion? Shall we vote?
Dora.
Yes.
Cummins.
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Fritz.
Yes.
Manetza.
Yes.
You're at the podium, ready to go.
Yeah.
I, Ronald Strang, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of this state, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of the Cemetery Board in and for the city of Grand Haven, county of Ottawa, and state of Michigan according to the best of my ability.
I will. Yep, you got it.
Next, we have a presentation, a 20-year service presentation to Earl Jorgensen of the DPW Parks Department.
Put it on like we do in Augusta? Nothing special in the pocket.
Albert, if I know they really are. That's right. Albert, if I know they really are. Yeah, now too.
Boxing all night, that.
Very good. Thank you, Earl. Thank you. Great job. Congratulations. 20 more. 20 years can be a long time.
All right, that brings us to the approval of the consent and regular agendas. Are there any changes?
Yes, Your Honor, I did have one request. Inadvertently placed an item under new business that ought to go under unfinished business. So I would ask we would move new business item C to unfinished business item B, as it was moved and seconded on January 20th and was postponed until tonight. So that's the potential introduction of a regulatory ordinance on regarding medical marijuana. And you had introduced it on January 20th and then postponed it until tonight. So technically ought to go under 14 under unfinished business.
Okay, makes sense. Any other changes to the agenda?
No problem.
Have a motion?
So, I'll support it.
Okay, motion by Scott, support by Fritz for the adjusted agenda. Please call the roll.
Cummins?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Fritz?
Yes.
Dora?
Yes.
Manetza?
Yes.
Who made the motion on that one? I didn't catch it.
Was
Okay, I did
Scott.
get it right then, okay.
All right, that brings us to the call to the audience. This is the first of two opportunities. At this time, members of the audience may address council on any item, whether on the agenda or not. Those addressing council will come to the podium, speak directly to the mayor, must identify themselves by name and address, will be limited to 3 minutes of speaking time. Council will hear all comments for future consideration, but will not have a response at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Those of you who don't know me, I'm Justin Roebuck. I'm the Ottawa County Clerk, and thank you for having us here tonight. Just want to be really quick, as I know there's a number of folks here, and we actually are speaking to something you have on your consent agenda, which is approval of a couple of food trucks outside of the community center in May for something called the Honor Rewards Expo. And I just wanted to take a couple of seconds to let you know a little bit about what that program is. Honor Rewards is a program that the county clerk's office has had for a couple of years now. It's basically a veteran's ID card that allows the veteran, kind of connects the veteran with a lot of area businesses. We started this a couple of years ago and have just had a really big success with it. We've got about over 400 veterans, over 200 businesses in Ottawa County that are signed up for this program. So really what we get excited about is that the veteran gets a listing of all the businesses, the area businesses that offer services and discounts to them. So really the Veteran Expo that is May 30 at the Community Center kind of grew out of that. Several conversations we had over the past couple of years with veterans, either at events or over the counter. And we thought what a cool idea it would be to kind of bring the businesses here in Ottawa County together with veterans across West Michigan that they serve and they support. So the Grand Haven Community Center has been phenomenal in working with us. We have the Community Center from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Saturday, May 30th, Saturday after Memorial Day. And we're really excited to be advertising this really across West Michigan. Not just for Ottawa County veterans, but we do want to kind of highlight the businesses that are right here in our community. And so that is what the food trucks are about, just kind of giving folks an opportunity to relax and enjoy the expo. We definitely invite you guys to come as well. I've got a little bit of information that I can certainly leave in the hands of your very capable city clerk here, if she'd like to take that. But feel free to come. We've got a lot of opportunities for tables still. If you own a business or know of a business owner that'd like to sponsor the event. And we just wanted to let you know a little bit about what that was about, and thank you for the support of the event. So thanks for having me tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, who's next?
Good evening. I'm Mike Verdine. I'm a resident at 619 Washington. I also manage a business at 623 Washington, Verdine's Inc. I'm jumping the gun a little bit here. It's not on your agenda, but I'd like to talk about a paid parking proposal. On Thursday morning, Main Street DDA heard a proposal on a paid parking system, and they approved forwarding it to council at some point and asking you to implement it. I'm opposed to this proposal as presented. I would like to see a survey of the affected businesses to see what the impact is going to be on those businesses and their employees. I don't think that we actually have a parking problem unless you want to develop more buildings or build up. I think that the parking study that we're currently working on is flawed. I don't understand why the buildings between Harbor and First and the parking lots between Harbor and First are part of a waterfront district and not part of the retail district from Second to Fourth. I would like City Council to explore reduced parking requirements for office and restaurant uses. I think that that would allow for more development without moving to a paid parking system. I'm not opposed to all paid parking. I'm opposed to this proposal. I'm opposed to paid parking throughout the entire district of the DDA. I am excited that our city manager has worked with City Council to put together a committee to explore what paid parking would look like so that we would have something concrete to discuss, and now we do, and I'm excited by that. I look forward to that further discussion, but currently I am opposed to this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm brand new. I don't come to these meetings often. My name's Joan Bailey. I actually live in Grand Haven Township, but come to downtown Grand Haven very regularly, and therefore taglining on Mike's opposition to the paid parking as a resident, and I guess I can kind of look at it more as a visitor perspective because I can't come down here. I'm not close enough to walk down here or whatever, so I'm totally opposed to paid parking. The cities of Muskegon, the cities of Holland are much larger than Grand Haven, and neither of them have paid parking in their downtown. If you ever go down to 8th Street in downtown Holland, it's beautiful, it's well-maintained, and you pull right up and you can park for free. I think it's going to hurt tourism. I think it's going to hurt businesses. I think it's going to hurt people like me that want to come down and just enjoy it, sometimes multiple times a day to do business. The post office, do you have to pay, to drop off something? You know what I mean? There's just a lot of different issues that I see with it, and I don't think Grand Haven per se really has that huge of a parking problem unless there is heightened development like Mike was talking about. So there's a couple ladies with me that are also opposed but don't really want to come up here and speak. So there's 3 of us that are on the same page. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Brandy Whitaker. I reside at 14917 Sandstone Place. I've been a resident of the township for 24 years. I am also a member of the Grand Haven Run Club, which was established in 2012. We are a group made up of over 1,300 members who meet weekday mornings, every Wednesday night, and every Saturday morning, mostly in the parking lot at Harborfront Place. After our scheduled runs, which can be anywhere from 45 minutes to 2 hours long, we socialize at local businesses for beverages and snacks. Morning groups will head to different locations such as the Delight or Morning Star for breakfast. And on Wednesday nights, you can find many of us either enjoying a beverage at Oddside Ales or at one of the many restaurants downtown. According to the information I had been given, paid parking would begin at 9 a.m. Our weekday runs meet at 8:30 a.m., which means we would need to start paying before the scheduled time when we leave for our run. I've also been told that everyone would have to use an app, and then we would need to make sure we turn off or check out of our parking spot when we leave. This seems very confusing, not just to us, but to visitors to the town as well. On Saturdays, we leave at 7:30, so our runners who are doing a long run would actually potentially have to start paying prior to the official start time for paid parking. To quote one member of our club, I can see us running from a different venue rather than paying to park. I too will not frequent downtown to run or for any other reason. If I have to pay to park, I can go to Muskegon to the farmer's market. I can go to Holland for unique shopping, great food and drinks, and park for free. Both cities are much bigger than Grand Haven, yet they do not charge me to park. Our run club can choose other establishments to eat or drink after our runs that are not downtown, the east side, or even venturing out to Spring Lake. I believe Grand Haven loses its quaint downtown feel the minute you charge me to enjoy it. Grand Haven and its local businesses will suffer if paid parking is instituted. In a world where small businesses are already losing out to online shopping like Amazon, our downtown businesses deserve to have the city support them and keep downtown parking free. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Judy Boyle. I'm 209 Washington. I oppose the parking situation. I don't know much about it. I read a lot on Facebook. I'd like to say that for Grand Haven, I'd like to be able to invite people into this town without scaring them away. I see a lot of faces in here that are familiar, that have businesses downtown. We have a very small window for our businesses. I want to personally invite every single person in Grand Haven to come to these businesses, to come have food and to frequent us so we don't go to Amazon. I want to invite the people that are out of town to come in. I don't want to say it's where we want to charge you to have you park. It seems to me that we're uninviting the people that we want here. We pay a lot of money to have these buildings. I personally bought this building 10 years ago, and I'm a single woman. I've spent 10 years to try to support this building. I want to retire in this town. I want to be part of this town. And it just, from what I've heard and reading on Facebook, it's going to drive people away. It's going to make people feel an uninvited guest to say, please come support our restaurants, please come support our stores, but would you mind putting money in our hands first before we even invite you in? It's just something that, read on Facebook. Go and read what the people are saying from the people that really put this town together. Our own people are saying we're no longer going to go downtown. Breaks my heart. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Steve Nagan. I'm at 433 Slayton. My wife Lynn and I own Matt Kite. I think many of you have been there. We've been doing business in downtown Grand Haven for 34 years. We've been battling paid parking since this was first suggested, knowing the damage it would do to our downtown shop. Did you know the Grand Haven economy generates about $59 million a year from tourism? According to the 131-page Grand Valley State University Economic Impact Report from 2006, so it's an actual report that was done by Grand Valley State, a 5% decrease in tourism would represent a $3 million economic decrease. A 10% decrease would represent a $6 million economic decrease. You're probably talking 50 to 100 jobs that would be lost. Based on years of retail experience, my wife and I talked about what we thought this would do to our business. We said, it'll probably hurt us 10 to 20%. We've been in the business for 34 years. Actually, we've been in business for almost 40 years. So a 15 to 20% drop would probably drive Matt Kite out of business in Grand Haven and would lose an icon. Well, according to the non-scientific poll taken on Facebook via Grand Haven Informed Community, the economic devastation would be much, much higher. I hope all of you have read that forum. Of the approximate 300 different people who joined the conversation, 300 expressed negative to very, very negative opinions. 5 people expressed a positive opinion. This is done all in the last 3 days. So this is a huge problem. That's like a 97%. That means basically Grand Haven will close. Here's some of the quotes. Ridiculous. This will make people go elsewhere, and homeowners who use the streets and lots for guests should really object. Next one. This does not look friendly to an outsider. Locals will shop online or eat in other towns. Not a winning formula. I don't see a good thing about this idea. Why Amazon is getting all the business. Free delivery. Tomorrow. Better think twice about this for your brick and mortar stores. There goes the town. Bad idea all around. Stores will lose customers. I will go shopping in Holland before I pay for parking. One more reason to shop in Holland. I won't go to Grand Haven if I have to pay for parking. No! I'm just quoting people. I can only speak for myself, but this is going to continue to drive my family and I down to Holland. And finally, the comment from a lifelong resident. This paid parking idea is the stupidest idea I've seen in my 78 years of living in Grand Haven. Why, what a way to guarantee the merchants downtown will be decimated quickly, and there will never be an ever-increasing drop in citizens and visitors coming to downtown Grand Haven. Very soon there'll be abundance of vacated buildings lining Washington Ave, a dead-looking downtown like so many other cities we've experienced. I asked the City Council to not even really consider this. This is an economic disaster. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Belinda Clark Reed. I live at 1329 Marion. I also work downtown Grand Haven, 233 Washington. I'm also a member of Grand Haven Run Club, as Brandy described. I wanted to express my opinion. I'm definitely opposed to the parking proposal that I've read about. Specifically, I disagree with the time limits and the pricing structure. I ask you to please do some more investigation to poll downtown residents, Grand Haven residents, downtown merchants, business owners, and employees to get a better idea of how this will impact us and them. I just think it's a very negative. It's going to be a very negative impact on our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Lucas Nagan. I live right downtown Washington on 106 Washington. At this age of globalization, I just asked you to think about accessibility. Paid parking totally just destroys the accessibility of Grand Haven. I have a number of friends who live in Detroit and Grand Rapids who frequently tell me, hey, we love coming to Grand Haven just for merit of the fact that we can park wherever, we can go downtown, we can have a drink, we can have a meal, and it's just easy to access. For brick and mortar stores, to echo the voices of my other colleagues here, the brick and mortar stores really just suffer from this. And unless you want to see this beautiful, quaint Grand Haven disappear from what we have, I would strongly oppose these paid parking. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Tanya Christensen. I live at 1037 Washington, and I own Must Love Dogs at 106 Washington. I was chosen to be on the committee to work towards what this paid parking would look like. It doesn't mean that I was for it, and I commend the city manager's open-mindedness to add people that may not be for the paid parking to that committee. I am against this. I understand why it's trying to be done, but at what expense? I've been at 211 Washington for 13 years and just recently moved to 106 Washington. I have invested everything that I ever have had or am into my business, into this community. I have faith in this community. I love the community and the citizens and my customers, and I feel like this would not benefit the city as a whole. I see the immediate concern and what the goal is. I just feel that the expense is too great. What happens, there's a possibility that this is implemented and everybody is just happy and delighted and the town goes and grows. But what if it doesn't? And what's the plan for the businesses if it doesn't? What if what everybody's talking about happens and businesses lose money and customers more to Amazon? We fight very hard for the businesses that we have. It's a struggle every moment of every single day, and I do it because I love it. I love my customers, and I want to continue to serve them. I hope the city has our back. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Chris Weavers. I own JW's Food and Spirits and JW's Market and Wine Shop. This is my this is my kitchen manager, Kathy Boston. I just wanted to express our views on the parking proposal. I'm not fully educated on it, but what I do know is that I struggle very hard every day to grow my businesses. In restaurants, average profit 5 cents on the dollar, and my brick and mortar wine shop is competing with Amazon every day. So those are a struggle in and of itself from my standpoint, but from my employee standpoint as well. If we have paid parking, I'm understanding that it's $100 a month for a parking pass. That takes a lot out of their income. It gives them a pay cut right out of the chute. Or I could cover it, which I would gladly do if I could, but because I make 5 cents on the dollar in the restaurant and I have an hopefully up and coming business at the wine shop, but I'm a little concerned about the impact that this may have on it. Kathy, do you have any input for this?
Hi, Kathy Boston, and I appreciate all the business owners, but as an employee, I would like to speak for myself and my guys. A 16-year-old who just got their license, their new car that makes $9 an hour, to ask them to pay to park, ridiculous. Those of us have mortgages. We have families to support. You're taking something out of our pocket that we have to recoup. It's hard enough in the winter for those of us, your servers, your bartenders, your cooks. We have to get cut. Everybody scrambles, and our bosses take very good care of us. Do not get me wrong, but it gets tight, and we all have to do what we have to do. But if I have to ask myself or my employees to start paying to park, the 3-hour was tough enough for us because we do have to go so far away, and I get it. But now you're asking us to take money out of our pockets while we're serving this community. Our salaries are paid 4 months out of the year by people that come here. You want us to pay to have them come pay. It's kind of, I'm sorry, I'm a little upset. We're fighting right now. We're in the middle of winter, and we're all kind of trying to make our money. So remember us that actually are doing the work for you people to keep this city alive. That making us pay is not okay. So that was it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Hi, my name is Jamie Cook Urbanowicz. I live at 825 Penoyer. I do not own a business downtown. I have worked seasonally downtown, and I am also, as it stands right now with the current proposal for the parking, I am against it. I will not seek employment downtown if I have to pay. I am within walking distance, but sometimes you do have to drive. I have that luxury. Not everyone does. And it is not fair to charge those that are working and serving the community and serving the tourists that come into town that we need, to tell them that, I'm sorry, yeah, you have to pay $100 a month. Or for many of them, they're paycheck to paycheck. They cannot afford that $100 up front. So now they're paying day to day to day, and they will be paying above $100 per month for those 5 months. It is not fair to the employees. It is not fair to the residents that live in that area. Those that live in the apartments above the stores that have already to pay for like overnight passes or the $20 per month to keep their cars where they live every month. To tack on another $100 per month is not fair. My other understanding from what I've seen is that this also includes the farmer's market. So how does this work when the farmer's market opens? This is not to exclude employers, employees, vendors, merchants. So these vendors that come to the farmer's market, they set up before the designated time. At noon, they are supposed to pack up and move after their 3-hour limit is up? Or are they supposed to pay a premium? How is this supposed to work? And these are people that are already trying to support themselves in an alternative revenue source, if you want to say it that way. They are already going to be struggling. Farmers in general don't make a whole lot. So you're asking them to cut into their profits just a little bit more to pay for parking. So I think a lot more research really needs to be done on this. There needs to be just a lot more looked at, along with the local residents, the vendors. Just research needs to be done before this is moved forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tim Dieters, 516 Orchard. I was on vacation when you, and I've been I'm a member of your planning commission. You were working on the marijuana establishments in the community. And I saw the map. I asked for the map today because I just got back from 2 weeks vacation. But for the work we put in for you, and the map I just saw with the 500-foot buffers added to, you end up with nothing more than any possibility on the east side of the highway. And on Beach Street, which has no parking. I don't understand your logic here. Once you did all that, you just eliminated a lot of potential retail spaces from having a business. So it does, I mean, I was kind of appalled at how this came down, and with only the opportunity on the east side of the highway, you're putting a burden on them, and you're putting it in an area with the least amount of parking. And I don't think that's fair. So I am asking you to reconsider what you are putting before the people, and this isn't a good plan. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Williams. I am here on the behalf of the Ottawa Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition. I am from Norton Shores. As a member of the Ottawa Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition, we work to prevent youth substance use, and we do have some concerns as it relates to the retail sales of marijuana, and some recommendations to limit the harm and safety for our youth. One of the concerns we have is that legalized marijuana leads to youth marijuana use. Colorado currently has the highest ranking for first-time marijuana use among youth, with a 65% increase in the years since legalization. Youth are particularly more susceptible to marijuana addiction, just because the human brain continues to develop until birth, until mid-20s. Also, regular marijuana use is linked to poor academic performance, The recommendation is to limit the number of marijuana-based businesses in a given community because there's a relationship that's been identified between the existence of marijuana businesses in a community and the increase in use by young people. Living near a marijuana dispensary relates to a 4 to 6-fold increase in past 30-day use among young people between the ages of 18 and 22. Currently, with this legalization of marijuana, it gives youth the perception that marijuana is not harmful. According to the Ottawa County Youth Assessment Survey from 2017, 45.3% of students believed that there was no risk or slight risk to smoking marijuana once or twice a week. There was also 48.6% of students who believed that there was either no risk or slight risk to using an electronic vapor product or an e-cigarette. Thank you for your time, and we hope that you consider our recommendations.
Thank you.
Jerry McCaleb, 1235 Slayton. And I also, I'm impressed with the passion of the no paid parking folks. That they come in here, it's not on the agenda, but this is to get this many people to say we don't want like $1 an hour or whatever the rate is going to be for parking to come and give impassioned reasons why this is a bad idea. I feel that same way about the medical marijuana thing. And I appreciate the fact that you're doing so much research on the parking issue. I was part of the parking committee when I was still on council, and so I know a lot of the work that went into it. Where do we go to look for information? Who's doing what and how does it work? We did the same thing with short-term rentals. Let's get the information, let's see what works and what doesn't work. The one thing we have not done that with is medical marijuana. It's been the zoning part of it. It's been the, how many stores, how many feet, how many, let's do 300 feet buffers, let's do 500 feet buffers, let's do 0 buffers. What hasn't been talked about is the detriment to the community that opening this door is going to bring in. Because nobody has been here. The Ottawa County Sheriff has a tremendous presentation about what the harm that could come. Our own public safety made a comment about that this is not really something that they want to see coming to our city. But I have not seen the presentation. I've been to Planning Commission, I've seen the talk about zoning, all this kind of stuff. I have not seen that information about the detriment to the person, the detriment to the development of young brains, the detriment to society, the detriment to the community by opening the door to this. We would be, if the city council agrees to do this, there'll be 2 cities in Ottawa County where medical marijuana is available, and we would be city number 2. That means that this would be the mecca. This is where people are going to come to in order to get their marijuana, to get their medical marijuana, to fulfill their card that they've gotten from a doctor or paid $100 online for. Is that who we want to be? I was at Planning Commission when a proponent for the marijuana said, boy, I can't wait till Grand Haven becomes the destination for medical marijuana, for recreational marijuana vacations. And if you don't think that that's a possibility, once you open the door to medical marijuana, you're dreaming. Because that, to me, is the ultimate goal. Do we want to live in a place that is a destination in Michigan for recreational marijuana vacations? Because once you open this door, the next one that's going to come knocking on the door is, well, we've got medical, we might as well just open it up, because what really is the difference? This concerns me for my community. This concerns me for everybody that lives. I remember the years of funding the DARE program to tell kids to stay away from drugs. So after years of telling kids stay away from drugs, now the city council is going to say, hey, we can have medical marijuana stores in Grand Haven. And we can put them on the east side because that's, boy, wouldn't that be good for the east side? Wouldn't that be good for business? Wouldn't that be good for the tax income? Without looking at the damage you're doing to people that use this stuff, that become addicted to this stuff. And don't tell me you can't get addicted to it, because you can get addicted physically or you can get addicted mentally. But I think this is something that you need to have the opportunity to hear from the other side that's going to tell you the downside of this, what you're opening the door to. And that is one thing that has not happened here, not in City Council and not at Planning Commission. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll be quick. I'm Susan Lowe, and I live in the township, but I work at the Bookman, and I'm representing them tonight in that we have had many, many conversations in the last couple weeks or so when we found out about paid parking with both our staff and our customers, and we are opposed to it for many reasons, but a lot of our customers, our loyal customers, we feel that would drive them away from stopping in for a newspaper or ordering a book or perusing our shelves for a new read. They're going to either go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble, and there will be no more bookstore in the community. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. I'm Joan Query from Lake Avenue, and I would like to speak with you just briefly regarding two concerns this evening, because I know I took quite a bit of your time at a previous City Council meeting. So forgive me for these 2 points. One, I don't want it construed by you good people that my earlier comments last month regarding a neighborhood marijuana grow operation indicated my support for legalized marijuana provisioning centers. Jim and I do not support the legalized businesses, and I believe that a gentleman who is one of the big growers in the state of Michigan kind of took my comments and then spoke with you later and indicated that, oh, well, we can help this little lady and her problems in her neighborhood if we open legalized businesses, because then the grower behind her won't be growing so much marijuana. And that is not the reason why I spoke with you at all. You know, as a matter of fact, legalized businesses in Grand Haven could make our problem on Lake Avenue even worse, because the several people that own this property could actually go into production. And I mean growing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of plants. And then thinking the vapors are just going to waft off into Mulligan's Hollow and the cemetery, you know, because they're going to provide product for these businesses. And as public safety and others indicated, we have no ability to inspect these places. And that's one of our issues that you are taxed with examining. How do we provide our ordinance officers with the ability to inspect and make sure that what is being processed is being done properly? And also, if there are issues in a neighborhood and someone comes to you for help, that an ordinance officer could inspect, which right now they can't unless they have a judge's order. So that was my first concern, that you did not think that that would alleviate our problem on Lake Avenue, because I don't think it's going to, and we don't support that. The second concern is, I thank you for all of the communications you've had with the Grand Haven Tribune, and Jim and I took the map of the areas where we would propose these businesses could be, and so we drove around those areas, and quite frankly, those corridors are in very vulnerable neighborhoods. Now, we are a landlocked city. We don't have a lot of room. But the areas where we would allow medical marijuana businesses, we have vulnerable individuals and vulnerable residents that have subsidized housing many times, and our businesses are going to be allowed right there. And I think that that is a real ethical problem for city council to deal with. Is this right, considering the vulnerability in these areas? So I thank you for your consideration. All the time that is taken on this will bear fruit. Whatever fruit that bears, I'm not sure, but all the time you're taking, do not feel badly about taking extra time, because it is, this is one of the big issues for us in the future. So thank you.
Hi there, Rebecca Neal. I actually had no intention of speaking, but I feel compelled to, given some of the comments that were made this evening. I am going to speak to medical marijuana, as this has been a conversation that I have invested very much of my time in. I don't agree with Ms. McCaleb in regards to the mecca that we would bring to this community by bringing medical marijuana here. Cannabis is a plant that we are legally allowed to grow into our basements and garages as the legal laws sit today. What you are creating is a regulatory opportunity to put that into the general public to see. It is no different, in my opinion, than a pharmacy that you may seek any other medication for. I feel that, as Mr. Dieters mentioned, a lot of what came of the provisions of the cannabis ordinance that we've created has allowed us for limited properties, and these properties had inflated in prices dramatically, which is exactly what we were trying to avoid. These 1,000-foot buffers have allowed for limited availability. It makes no sense. You are this is a prohibition that has ended well many years ago. There really is no reason for us to have apprehension as far as a medical ordinance. We are not talking about adult use. I agree that there could be considerations of those buffers then, although I feel that anything that has been regulated thus far as a pharmacy goes, or even an alcohol establishment, should be no more than what we are being required per this ordinance. These regulations are slightly obscene. I feel like I pose no risk to anybody in this community. I have 3 children that go to the Grand Haven School District. I have a compound of cannabis in my system at any given time. I am not addicted to this substance. This is something I do every day. I educate people, and that's all I'm asking to bring to this community. I really want you to keep that in consideration as we continue on these ordinances. I appreciate the time that has been put into this, but I really want us to be heard as far as a medical consumer. We need this accessibility. Again, this is a 12-year process, and again, I commend that we are one of the communities seeking this option, but I really want the propaganda to be no longer a part of this process. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Jared Kramer. I reside at 11571 Oak Grove Road in Grand Haven Township. And I'd like to just urge the council to revisit the original proposal presented by the Planning Commission for medical marijuana. This is an issue that I know emotions run high, but there's a lot of really good statistics out there. 8 in 10 physicians, according to the New England Journal of Medicine, support the use of medical marijuana. 92% of those who use medical marijuana find it helpful for the conditions they're dealing with. The average age of someone using medical marijuana is about 41, according to a study by the University of Michigan. Over half of those using it, according to that same study, are over the age of 50. These are not, this is not, fast times at Ridgemont High. These are people who are fighting cancer, dealing with chronic pain, significant anxiety, that have an option for a treatment that has been approved legally, that's recommended by their doctors. And the fact that that we would be the second place in Ottawa County where that's available breaks my heart. That people who are older and struggling and trying to get a medicine that's been legal and allowed for medical use have to work so hard to get it. And I'd love to see Grand Haven become a place that's more compassionate to those in the medical marijuana community who need this drug. Thank you.
Thank you.
Josh Bruger, 626 Slayton, Grand Haven.
Several community members informed me over the weekend that the history of how we arrived at the eve of approving medical marijuana in the city of Grand Haven has become a bit hazy. As such, I thought I'd stop by to share a little history and offer a suggestion on moving forward. On March 18, 11 months ago, then Councilman Manetza and Councilman Fritz voted in favor of not prohibiting the sale of recreational marijuana in the city of Grand Haven. The meeting minutes will show that Councilman Fritz also voted to allow people to smoke at a public event like a Coast Guard Festival beer tent. Councilman Manetza argued that the majority of our citizens had voted in favor of legalizing marijuana and that we as a council had an obligation to give the people what they voted for. I offered that the proposal that passed had two parts to it. While it was clear that a small majority of Grand Haven residents wanted marijuana to be legal, there was no way for us to know if the same voters also wanted to have pot shops open in Grand Haven. I stated I would support medical marijuana sales, but not recreational at that time. In a 3-2 vote, I joined then Mayor McCaleb and Councilman Scott to maintain the prohibition on marijuana sales. The next day, at the Michigan Municipal League Spring Conference in Lansing, I approached Councilman Fritz to ask him if he would support medical marijuana in Grand Haven. He stated that he would and agreed to join me in placing medical marijuana sales on the next council agenda. I asked City Manager Pat McGinnis to do so, and at that council meeting, Mr. Manetza joined Mr. Fritz and myself in a 3-2 vote directing the Planning Commission to review the zoning ordinance toward this end. To the matter at hand tonight, appropriate locations for the sale of medical marijuana in Grand Haven. I apologize, we only have 180 seconds to speak. I will do my best to speak quickly. Medical marijuana sales establishments are by definition an establishment that exists to provide access to a medically prescribed drug. Standalone drugstores, while allowed in more zoning districts, are found in only 2 locations in the city of Grand Haven, within 2 blocks of US 31 in Jackson on the north end of town, and within 2 blocks of US 31 and Robbins Road on the south end of town. A medical marijuana establishment is not the same as a retail alcohol sales establishment. While we can purchase alcohol at Walgreens, we cannot pick up a medical prescription at Seaway Party Store on Taylor, at Fertino's on Washington, or at the Beech Tree Party Store on Beech Tree. There is a precedence in our zoning ordinance for what is called an overlay district, a medical marijuana overlay district allowing sales in the commercial zone within 1,200 feet of the US 31 in Jackson and US 31 and Robbins Road intersections, provided they meet all other proximity requirements to schools and churches, is the right place to allow medical marijuana sales in Grand Haven at this time. After time has passed and these establishments have proven themselves to be good for our city, a wise council can look toward expanding locations for the sale of marijuana elsewhere in the city. In closing, if this council is willing to approve medical marijuana sales near these open, transparent, and appropriate intersections, I would hope that Councilman Scott would join the majority in a 5-0 vote, remembering that the 4 men who sit aside you tonight have already voted on one occasion or another to legalize recreational marijuana in the city of Grand Haven. With the 5-0 vote tonight, this council can show that collaboratively they have found a very reasonable and good compromise. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Dr. Jen Greenlee. I live at 16731 Ashley Lane. Oregon and Colorado are both 2 states which have already gone before. Most of you know that marijuana has truly been a gateway to more. I do know that there are some people that responsibly can take the version of marijuana which has supposedly medicinal benefits. However, do many of you even know that a marijuana plant has THC and CBD differently on a male and a female plant? When people are going to be growing this, what kind of supervision is going to be there for monitoring the safety and the efficacy of what type of plant is going to be produced? According to the Oregon report that I have, not only was there an increase in the problems that it made in their community, we look at the treatment for problems had to be increased. Children were removed 60% more from homes because of abuse by parents. How many people can have a medicine growing in their backyard without any controls, without knowing what kind of dosage amounts, without any safe delivery methods to be dispensed to people. There are doctors that won't prescribe medical marijuana because it is not even approved by the FDA, because they don't even have the standards for how much can be given. There are too many variables that are not determined yet. And people talk about the legalization of marijuana. Sure, it's from state to state how it's done, but federally we know it's still not legalized. Federally, the FDA has not been able to act on it, but yet we're going to go ahead and make our own laws aside from what the federal government does. Now, if we take this particular thing with marijuana, compare it to abortion. Federally, Roe v. Wade continues to have preeminence in terms of saying, yeah, it's okay, you can have an abortion, but yet Michigan has had a law from way back that has banned abortions, but yet we disregard it, and in Michigan alone in 2018, over 26,000 abortions were done, just for our state. So if we're going to use that kind of comparison, how does that compare with what's happening with marijuana? Other statistics include, we don't know about how much of an effect affects people. When doctors do prescribe it, for example, my mother having arthritis, she was trying the CBD tincture, a cream. There's no way any doctor can say, yeah, you need to do this 5 times a day and how many minutes, et cetera, et cetera. There's still a lot to be discovered and determined in terms of the safety and the protocol of what's necessary before we can be wise in what we do for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Would anyone else care to address council at this time? If not, we will close our call to the audience, move on with our agenda. Next item on our agenda is something new that Pat wanted to highlight, so I'll let him read it to you.
Oh, boy.
Here.
This is the call to the viewing audience. For those watching the live stream, please go to grandhaven.org, grandhaven.org, and scroll to the agenda tab at the very bottom of the homepage to view the complete packet for tonight's meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Pat. I think we'll move up to an opening comment on future agendas.
Might be a good idea.
Better late than never.
Might be clicking off the live feed to get to it now. That's the problem.
All right. I believe that brings us to the consent agenda.
This is to approve the special goal-setting work session minutes of December 9th, 2019, special work session minutes of January 27th, 2020, and February 3rd, 2020, special council meeting minutes of January 27th, 2020, and regular council meeting minutes of February 3rd, 2020. Approve the bills memo in the amount of $1,527,853.07. Declare April 26th, 2019 and April 24th, 2020 as Arbor Day in the city of Grand Haven. Approve the school resource officer agreement with Grand Haven Area Public Schools and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the necessary documents. Approve the Dancing on the Grand special event to be held on Wednesdays from June 10th through August 25th, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Allow closure of the park during the event and allow organizers to charge a $3 admission fee. Approve the VFW Rib Fest special event to be held on Friday, May 22nd from 3 p.m. until 1 a.m. and Saturday, May 23rd from 10 o'clock a.m. to 1 o'clock a.m. in the VFW parking lot and 2nd Street. Allow amplified music until 12 o'clock a.m. and permit alcohol consumption. Approve the Ottawa County Veterans Expo's request to host 2 food trucks outside the community center on May 30th, 2020 from 8 o'clock a.m. to 4 o'clock p.m. and approve a budget amendment and revised deficit elimination plan for the Chinook Pier Fund and submit a budget amendment, resolution, and letter to the state of Michigan.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay, I was in stereo. I think it was motion by Dora, second by Fritz. Questions on the motion? Anything on the consent agenda?
One change on the February 3rd minutes, item 2040, The vote on the amendment to remove Building C from the demo list, I was a no vote on the amendment. Right now it reads that I voted yes on it, and it was 4-1, so I just want that. I was a yes vote on demolition of Buildings A and B, but on the other, so. That is all.
Any other questions? I believe we're ready to vote.
Scott?
Yes.
Fritz?
Yes.
Dora?
Yes.
Cummins?
Yes.
Manetza?
Yes. Okay, first item of new business.
First item is to approve the 2020 Hispanic Heritage Fiesta Concert fundraiser to be held on June 5th at the Lynn Sherwood Waterfront Stadium from 5 o'clock p.m. to 9 o'clock p.m. and permit alcohol consumption. The Parks and Recreation Board and the administration recommend approval.
Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Fritz, second by Cummins. Pat, do you have any comment on this?
Only that I know we've got some representatives tonight, I believe, that may be here if you have any questions. And this was a very successful event this past September. Well supported locally by the business community, by the city, by many nonprofit groups, and they're looking to do it again, only this time moving it to the spring and doing it at Lynn Sherwood Waterfront Stadium on a Friday night, I believe.
Raina, could you come up?
State who you are and if you're on the way home.
Thank you, Raina Masco. Do you need me to state my address?
For the record, sure.
The record.
13 Woodlawn, Grand Haven. So this would be a fundraiser leading to the festival on September 26th.
Okay, so this is not the Fiesta, it's a fundraiser for the Fiesta.
That's correct.
Yes.
The Fiesta would be scheduled at September 26th, and we will be coming before you at a later time for that.
Okay, thank you. Questions, comments?
I won't be voting for this because of the alcohol in the stadium. We've talked about this at the Coast Guard Festival before, and they've agreed not to have it there, along with a couple other other activities over the year. But I just don't want to start this thing, and I don't want. I'm just not supportive of having alcohol in the stadium. However, the event itself, I'm fine with the event. I've got reservations about putting alcohol at the stadium.
So there has been other events at this stadium with alcohol in it. We did meet with the Department of Public Safety, met with SHAR, and so all of this has been approved, and it has been approved because of prior events happening just like this one.
Go ahead.
Yeah, certainly. The Heritage Fiesta was a fantastic event last summer, no doubt. It's good to see you guys are doing a fundraiser. I think a lot of the money that was raised went to some very good causes. I've seen the staff memo that the Human Relations Commission reviewed this request and recommended to waive the $500 park rental fee. And then the staff memo says that the nonprofit fees include the $500. So I'm just wondering from staff, are we, is it, you want us to discuss waiving that $500 fee, or is that something that staff's, recommending too?
Mr. Mayor and Council, I'm Luann Worksma. I live on South 2nd Street, and I'm the chair of the Human Relations Commission. As one of the hosting organizations of the first Hispanic Heritage Fiesta, and now of the second, including this fundraiser for it, we have asked on our part to help with the costs involved and to waive this $500 fee. Should the council not be inclined to waive the fee, we understand that city budgets have to be balanced. We would ask that you would consider a transfer of funds from the boards and commissions budget on our behalf to this event so that we can cover that fee on their behalf, and that would help us be a sponsoring organization.
Yeah.
I think our recommendation, I'm looking at it, and Char's here, and she authored the memo. The idea would be to, waive any fees that we have for use of the property, but ask them to cover the costs that we have involved in putting up the screening or, the things that actually are direct costs.
That is correct. We don't want to not pay our hard city workers and cover the cost of wear and tear on fencing and that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, that seems more than reasonable. Yeah, I mean, I don't have a concern with, waiving the $500 fee. In this case, the HRC has been very much a part of organizing and helping the Fiesta, and I think this lines up with the HRC's goals and work and kind of mission that you folks have. So I don't have a concern with that being waived or taken out of the estimated costs.
If I could just add to Councilman Scott's point, I attended a courtyard concert at Waterfront Stadium last July with friends, and alcohol was served, and everything went just swimmingly, and it was a family-friendly event, and a lot of people enjoyed it under the sun. It's going to be daylight. It's getting close to the longest day of the year. It's not going to be a late night with rowdy people. We're sure that all proper controls will be taken to make sure that it's consumed responsibly.
I understand that, but I'm just not in favor of putting alcohol in the stadium. I never have been, and I'm not going to change that position. And talking with the Coast Guard committee, they would like to have done that before, and they bowed out because there's a couple of us on council. I'm not two for sure, maybe three, I don't know. But anyways, and they bowed out of it because we objected to it. So, but whatever. So I'm not going to support it. I'm sorry. I just do not like the idea of putting alcohol in the stadium. I think it's not a family-friendly idea down there, and I just don't like that. I won't support it. I'm sorry.
Mike?
Yeah, I was at the Parks and Rec Board, and when you did your presentation talking about the alcohol and things, is that yes, we did have one down there for sure. It was the WGHN had their promotional down there, which had kids and stuff like that, and they had wristbands, whatever, for them to go on there. So it was well attended. Well, not really well attended. It was their first time they did it, so it was pretty good, and it was no problem with all as far as the alcohol goes. I'm very supportive of it. I think it's going to be a great event down there. It'll be great for you guys to at least raise some funds to help you get started. I know it was very difficult last year. You just started and didn't have no funds. They just had to go by donations and people doing it. This time, at least, you're trying to raise some money to make sure that the event even gets bigger and better, which I'm sure it will. And you're having, from my understanding from what you said at the meeting, was that the band that is coming to play there also is going to be a big name band for the Fiesta. If I remember right, they're well known in the community.
So it's a tribute band to a very worldwide known band.
Yes. And so that should draw quite a few people in there for it, and it does draw good attention. So I'm in favor of the event, and I'm also in favor of waiving the $500 for you also. So I'm gonna vote for this to move forward with it because I just think it's a good thing for our community to do.
Thank you.
Mike?
I also am in favor of it, so that makes 3.
All right, and I am as well. I think that sounds like a good event. Sounds like it's good that you're getting ahead of the cost with fundraiser and that you'll put on a good show. I asked the question as well, what's our history of alcohol in Lynn Sherwood Stadium, and we do have a history, and it's not been problematic, and it's not automatically a family unfriendly thing. It depends on how you conduct your affairs, and you, by all accounts, are going to do a very good job. So I appreciate that. I'm okay with the $500 waiver. I want to make sure that one thing that was in the application, and probably something we're going to see more than once as we go along here, is there was an item that I had highlighted, which I'll get to. Oh, here. City support services requested. Maybe this is a question for Pat. So if yes, please describe use of depot concession and depot for the guest artist marine and media station, which is clearly not going to be available anymore. Is there?
That's correct. And we're very well aware of that with the issues that are going on, so that's not something that we'll be requesting.
Okay, so I figured it was kind of beside the point now anyway, I just wanted to point it out.
Just prior to the issues, yes.
And I'm sure this will come up again and again for the next few months, but the depot is otherwise occupied these days.
That's correct.
And we wish it weren't that way, but that's the way things are. So, but otherwise, yes, I think this sounds like a good event, and I'm pleased to see it being carried on responsibly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Any more questions on the motion? We were ready to vote.
Fritz?
Yes.
Dora?
Yes.
Cummins?
Yes.
Scott?
No.
Manetza?
Yes. Next item.
Next item is to approve the Soccer in the Sand special event with an expanded layout to be held on Saturday, June 27th and Sunday, June 20th. I have the wrong date written down. Second.
Basha.
June 27th and June 28th. I'll put the 20th here. Let's read that again just a second. This is to approve the Soccer in the Sand special event with an expanded layout to be held on Saturday, June 27th and Sunday, June 28th, 2020 at the City Beach, and require organizers to reapply annually for the expansion as long as the water table remains high. The Parks and Recreation Board and the administration recommend approval.
Is there a motion?
So moved?
Okay.
Second.
That was pretty much a tie. I don't. Motion by Cummins, second by,
I said it, doesn't matter.
okay, Fritz.
Mike, just put Mike.
Mike.
Yeah,
Mike.
just Mike, one of the Mikes.
The triple play.
Yeah.
Mike?
Okay. Questions on Soccer in the Sand?
No, I was at the Parks and Rec Board when they presented this also, and the reason why they're expanding it is because of our beaches. If you've been down there lately, there's not much of a beach at all, and if you want to continue to have the event here, otherwise they're gonna have to stretch it out over 2-3 weekends, and it just won't work. So they asked to come and expand it to a little bit longer, little area, and still maintain what they have.
It's always been a great event, well attended, so I have no issues with the expansion.
What I like about them is that they use Harbor Transit to get the people in and out of the beach, which is very, very good. They tell all their applicants right away where the drop-off areas, pickup areas for them to go. I can see it from my business, to the back parking lot over there behind my shop there is definitely full. And Mayor, you've witnessed that many times yourself when the Soccer in the Sand comes in, how they use it. So I'm very, very supportive of it.
Yeah, my only concern in looking at it was that in the past, we've required them to keep a day area clear in front of the City Beach parking lot so that people could have some opportunity to use the beach without being in the middle of a soccer field. And I see that there is no such area now. But having been down there when they're busy, that area is pretty full of people anyway. So it may be kind of moot. But other than that, though, it's a very popular event. Draws a lot of people. They make good use of resources, good use of Harbor Transit. I'm not aware of any major complaints. And I think that if it's going to survive as an event, we do this. Any other questions? We were ready to vote.
Dora?
Yes.
Cummins?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Fritz?
Yes.
Manetza?
Yes. Okay, next item. Unfinished business.
Next item is to approve a final resolution amending, you're gonna make me read all this again, aren't you? Amending sections 40-201.07, 40-201.16, 40-201.19, 40-402.01, 40-411.02B, 40-413.02B, 40-413.03, 40-414.02B, 40-415.02B, 40-416.02B, 40-417.02B, 40-418.02B, 40-419.02B, 40-420.02B and add section 40-543A of the Grand Haven zoning ordinance to regulate medical marijuana facilities. The Planning Commission recommends approval.
All right, we need a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, motion by Cummins, second by Dora. And this is the second reading of this zoning ordinance amendment, although there is some new text included. I guess before we proceed with discussion, if we could have a recap of what the new text is.
We can, and Jennifer Howland's here. She's done quite a bit of work discussing it with me and the city attorney over the past couple of weeks here, and we've got some clarifications, I think, particularly in regard to the buffers and how they are measured when we consider a sensitive use, which are one of the buffered areas, and then the marijuana regulated use, and how far they are apart, and whether you use the building envelope or the building lines or the lot lines, and under what circumstances do you use which ones. I think there was a good deal of confusion maybe about that last time, and we just wanted to clear that up, and I think Jennifer's got some pretty clear diagrams that I had a hard time following on my phone today, but maybe on the big screen I'll get a better picture of it tonight. So turn it over to Jennifer.
Jennifer Howland, Community Development Manager. I have a write-up for you as well with a slightly adjusted map. If you would like to see these copies, I have them. So you give me the word and I'll walk up to you. Otherwise, okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Okay, so the only difference from the map that you see on the screen is one additional arrow, and I labeled the different arrows. So we're trying to establish different ways to measure buffers when there are multiple land uses on a property or a multi-tenant building. So hopefully this illustrates what we're trying to get at. Before, it was just from lot line to lot line. If there was a sensitive land use like a park or a school, and then a lot where a proposed medical marijuana facility was located, then we would just measure it from lot line to lot line. We can still do that. And it's still valid when you've got one standalone land use, medical marijuana facility, one standalone sensitive land use. You just measure lot line to lot line. On your map that I gave you, that would be item A, the arrow A. The other option is, it says in the ordinance, if the proposed medical marijuana facility would be located on the same lot as any of the above sensitive land uses, so you have a medical marijuana facility and a church, for example, on the same property, then the buffers shall be measured from the building footprint of the proposed medical marijuana facility to the building footprint of the sensitive land use. That would be arrow B, as in Bravo. We'll see that on the screen in a moment, but it's showing a parcel with a multi-tenant building and an outlot. And the outlot in this example is a sensitive land use, so let's say it's a daycare, and then there's a proposed medical marijuana facility in the shopping center. We would measure it from the building where the medical marijuana facility is to the building of the daycare facility. That's arrow B. Arrow C at the top is if the proposed medical marijuana facility would be located on the same lot as at least two additional land uses, such as a multi-tenant commercial establishment, and a sensitive land use is located on another lot. So you've got a shopping center with a proposed medical marijuana facility, and then there's a church down the street on its own parcel. We would measure from the building footprint of the proposed medical marijuana facility to the lot line of the sensitive land use. I've added one more section. It is very similar to C, it's just swapping the terms. So that's arrow D, it's in Delta. If a sensitive land use is located on the same lot as at least two additional land uses, such as a multi-tenant establishment,
and a proposed medical marijuana facility would be located on another lot. The buffers shall be measured from the building footprint of the sensitive land use to the nearest lot line of the the building footprint of the sensitive land use to the nearest lot line of the medical marijuana facility. So this is an older map, but I'm trying to give you an idea of the lower green parcel where the proposed medical marijuana facility is on its own, one land use on that lot, to, for example, the sensitive land use outlot, the daycare in my example from earlier. We'd measure from the property line of the green box to the building line of the sensitive land use. It's a lot of wording, but it's, I believe, what needs to be stated if you like this arrangement of measuring in different ways. So again, D, the last term in D should be medical marijuana facility. There's a typo on what I gave you.
So the language that you've got under 543A, Section B, paragraph C.
B3C. I wouldn't necessarily label them A, B, C, D in there. It was just to recognize my map illustration.
No, I'm reading the way the text is structured here. That's the paragraph number. Paragraph C.
Paragraph C, it says buffer shall generally be measured.
Right. Right. So that's what I'm referring to by C, not these. So where it talks about, it says, however, if a proposed medical marijuana facility would be located on the same lot as any of the above sensitive land uses, then the buffer shall be measured from the building footprint of the proposed medical marijuana facility to the building footprint of the sensitive land use. In that sentence, it sounds like both these uses are on the same parcel.
So that would be arrow B. In the multi-tenant building parcel,
Okay, so
multiple land uses, including a sensitive land use, a marijuana facility, and some other land uses.
And so the purple arrow that's labeled B here is at least 500 feet long.
Yeah, this is not to scale. This is just an illustration of how we would measure it, and it's actually not.
I understand. I'm just trying to
Okay.
make it really clear to everybody what these sentences mean. So that would be a 500-foot spacing building to building.
Right, it would have
But
to be
there's
a
no-
very large
But there are
parcel.
no intervening parcel lines.
Correct. They're on the same parcel.
So then the next sentence, if the proposed medical marijuana facility be located on the same lot as at least two additional land uses, such as a multi-tenant commercial establishment and a sensitive land use is located on another lot, the buffers are measured from the building footprint of the proposed medical marijuana facility to the nearest lot line of the sensitive land use. And that would be item C, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Item A would just be a normal 500-foot long arrow at number A. So item D, is that represented in this text anywhere?
D?
The paragraph D, or the arrow D you have there, how's that?
I've added that.
That's not in this text.
Correct. So it is very similar wording to the last sentence in your proposed ordinance, which is represented by arrow C. It's just swapping medical marijuana facility for sensitive land use. It's almost verbatim the same language. Trying to illustrate when you've got a medical marijuana facility on its own lot and there's a sensitive land use on a lot with multiple land uses, we would also measure that. We wouldn't want to measure just one direction with the arrow, so I felt that that was most comprehensive to add that last statement.
So do you have that text that you could?
Right, the text is D.
Is that in the first page of this?
Right, and I apologize, I typed this up this evening and there is a typo. So the very last phrase, the last line of your document should say medical marijuana facility, not sensitive land use. So if a sensitive land use is located on the same lot as at least two additional land uses, such as a multi-tenant commercial establishment, and a proposed medical marijuana facility would be located on another lot, The buffers shall be measured from the building footprint of the sensitive land use to the nearest lot line of the medical marijuana facility. It would just be a continuation of the text in your draft ordinance, same paragraph,
Okay,
just longer.
all right. Yeah, I was still looking at what's in our packet, which is the published version of the text.
Understood.
Well, this started with a discussion about if a buffer just touches a small amount of the parcel that might otherwise be eligible for medical marijuana facility, would they have to split off a parcel? Would they have to have site condominium lines created? And this is a alternative way of dealing with that?
Right, without chopping up a bunch of parcels just to get around an ordinance.
Okay, and this was all, including your recent text here, this has all been run through Ron Balchi?
Ron has seen the text that you have in front of you. D is just a rewording of the last statement in your draft ordinance. It has the same effect. I don't feel it needed legal review because it's simply illustrating another direction of measurement.
Well, in all cases, the buffers that were included in the rest of this ordinance are preserved. The 500-foot buffers exist between sensitive uses and medical marijuana facilities. It would never be less than that.
Yes. And in this case, if you were to take this and consider it like a to-scale map, none of these would be allowable.
Understood. They're a little bit confusing just because you tried to put them all in one comprehensive diagram.
Yep.
You also have text adjustment for the medical marijuana facility is located in compliance, and then somebody subsequently places a sensitive use close to it. It's which would be item D in the text that was published. That would be basically not made into a non-conforming use.
Correct.
And I think the other item that's different now is the striking of the line on site and building placement standards and building form standards.
Right, we discussed how we try to encourage reuse of existing buildings, and the statement, site and building placement standards and building form standards of the applicable district shall be met. That kicks out almost every existing building unless it was built in the recent past, last 10 years or so. Many of our buildings don't meet today's setback requirements or have enough transparency or have enough mix of brick and stone to meet all of those standards. So by striking that, we allow any building in the appropriate district to have a medical marijuana facility, and also any new construction for a new facility would have to meet the standards of the district.
All right. And because this line is struck, the standards of the district would govern, so we wouldn't be without standards.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Those are the only changes?
Yes.
All right. Questions and comments?
Okay, I will oppose the marijuana in Grand Haven, like I did before. I have not changed my mind. I will not change my mind. I think our police chief, our sheriff, the retired policemen, officers that I've talked to, all of them, and talking to them, they informed me also that the large majority of our police officers, if not all of them, I'm not sure about all of them, but anyways, a large majority of them do not support marijuana in our city. We pay these people to protect our city, to watch over our city, and yet we ignore what they have to say. I think that's tragic. Marijuana outlets within a 10-mile radius the youth of our community, of any community, goes up. So in other words, when we put a facility in, within a 10-mile radius, the youth around that facility, the usage goes up. In the 70s and 80s, the marijuana content was a lot less than it is today. In fact, it's 25% higher for people who smoke it. Edibles are 50% higher, and oil and waxables are 90% higher. I've seen firsthand, my son went from marijuana to cocaine to heroin. I've dealt with it, I've seen it, it's a gateway drug, and nobody can tell me it's not. We had a gentleman come in here that talked about seeing it in Chicago. He tells us it's a gateway drug, and yet we ignore what he says. I think there's enough evidence to prove that. I've seen it firsthand, so I know that's true. Marijuana use can worsen depression. It leads to anxiety and suicide. People here that are promoting it have one thing in their eyesight is dollar signs. That's all they have. The only reason they're promoting it's not for the good of our community. It's for dollar signs. It's to make money. And how are they making their money? They're making it off the little people. The people that are going to come here that don't have a lot of money, that's going to buy from these people and make them rich. And that's wrong. And I say, if we're going to have it here, then we need enough facilities that people aren't parking their cars out and waiting in line, and there's little kids that are waiting in cars for them. As I've talked to people that are around the facilities, they put their little kids in the car, they park their car, they get in line, and those kids could be out there in the car for an hour by themselves. If we're going to put it, we better put enough facilities in there where those little kids aren't there. But I do not promote this stuff, and I will never promote it. I think it's wrong. Like I said, I've seen my son deal with it firsthand, and nobody can tell me it's not a gateway drug, because it is a gateway drug. And I'm not going to vote for this. And I will never support it. I think it's a detriment to our society. I think it's a detriment to our city.
Mike?
Let the other ones go.
Mike? Right.
What is this, pass the baton or something like that? I think the changes look good. I don't have any concerns with them. I think it clarifies. I know Mike had some questions last time about how do we measure this and piece to piece, and we don't want much of our parcels to split up for just one particular purpose. So I think this kind of keeps the intent related to the buffers that some folks want, and keeps some of those distances in mind. And I said this at the last meeting, the thought that marijuana isn't currently here, or that we're just keeping it out by, not approving medical marijuana facilities is just not accurate. Marijuana is here. It can be delivered here from other medical marijuana facilities. It can be grown and produced here by any property owner, and whether we want that or not, there's nothing that we can do about that. Voters in this state and in this community already supported a law that allows for that. For me, I'm making a decision based on a democratic process. Many years ago, folks supported medical marijuana quite strongly in this community. I think we have a responsibility to listen to that will of the voters. I understand that there's certainly folks that may disagree with medical marijuana use. But there's also a lot of, and there may be, certain folks in certain professions that are against it as well, but there's also a lot of folks in certain professions that are for medical marijuana use. There's an overwhelming majority of physicians that are okay with prescribing it, allowing their patients to have it, knowing the risks that may be involved in it. There's a lot of risks with other things that are legal for folks to use as well, and certainly nobody can take away any personal horrible experience that somebody's had. There's no doubt about that. But this product, through these facilities at least, goes through extensive testing to inform consumers on the amount of THC that they're consuming. The CBD products that are already out there, my understanding is that that was actually federally passed in some sort of farm bill at some point. So that's actually federally okayed as it is. That's not just that wasn't a state thing. I was just down in Florida all last week, and there's CBD signs all over the place. I mean, it's a product that is already allowable out there. So I believe that whether you agree with medical marijuana or not, I think it's if somebody's medical doctor says that they could benefit from it and prescribes it to them, that's something that they should be able to get in their own community, the same as they can get any other prescription at Walgreens or any other pharmacy that's available to them. So that's my stance on it at this point.
Thank you.
I've struggled with this ever since we got on the Planning Commission in March. Personally, I don't support it, but I'm not here to supply what I personally believe or do not believe is the right or wrong thing to do. My position here is to weigh everyone's opinion that's brought before me and to try to make a best decision for everybody involved. I can't dispute Denny's argument. We've had, information supplied by the sheriff. We'd have information supplied by our own director of public safety who says it's not a good thing to do. Not people to be taken lightly. We rely on them for our safety and for the community's safety, as well as our tourists and everybody here. I believe the work that has been done on this to get to the point where we are now has been done in very good faith amongst the people up here on council, with concessions by pretty much everyone. I know that there were a lot of folks who came before us who wanted buffers. There were many folks that came before us that didn't want buffers. I think it's probably been 50-50 with people who are in favor of it and people who are not. So I guess from where I stand right now, looking at what I have before myself, it's probably the best version of what we could expect to live with at this time, other than not having it at all, which I don't believe is a true representation of what I'm supposed to do. So that's kind of where I stand.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike. Well, I remember starting out on this journey with Mr. Bruger. We had a nice long discussion at MML on this, and at that time, when we first started this journey, there was definitely no place around close to get their medicine. The closest place was at Kalamazoo at the time. And to have senior citizens that were using it because cancers and everything else, to have them on the road to drive all the way to Kalamazoo, we came up with the idea that it would be great to have at least a facility here to move forward with, so people could actually get medicine. That I'm really ashamed that our state legislators didn't put it in the pharmacies. I was hoping that would be a more regulated place for it to be, because that would take a lot of the pain away from everybody else. But we ended up with what we have today, so my wishes weren't granted on that, so it didn't make any difference. But for the buffers, I don't like some of the changes. I like the from lot line to lot line myself, personally. I just thought it was good. We worked on that we even called a special meeting to sit down and talk about it, and we came out with an agreement on it, I thought. But evidently, me being a council member and not a planning commissioner, I look at what is best for all, not just Yeah, there's 56% said yes, and, and 44% said no. I still have to represent that other 44% that wanted to. That's why I wanted to have a buffer zone. That's why I wanted to have a distance on it. Because people come here and they say they wanted to have it. I know we need to have something. I didn't want to have a whole bunch of facilities. Councilman Cummings said we should probably open it up more. He would like to, at the last meeting, he said he wanted to open it up and do it, but that's not what the intent was when we first started out. And I'm looking at the other people that really don't like it. But it is still a medicine that people out there need, and I know at the time there wasn't anything around here. There is one now over in Nunica, closer to drive to. If they need medicine, they don't have to drive all the way to Kalamazoo. So I'm pretty kind of on the border here right now with it, because at the time we first started, like I said, was that we did not have anything here. But times have changed. Muskegon came into effect. Nunica has theirs. And I was out there. I mean, if you guys took time to actually sit out there, went over to the gas station. I went and sat in their parking lot. It's really not that busy. I've talked to the other people that come and go there. I have some friends of mine that have to have the medicine. It works beautiful for them. They go out there, they get in and out with not a problem whatsoever, because it's not the recreational. I'm dead against recreational. I don't think Grand Haven deserves that thing here. But at the time, we do need to have medicine. I'm not really hipped up on all the fancy wording and all that other stuff. I tell you what, that's just way too much. Try to make things simple. This is not even simple at all. If you read the whole paragraph, it just goes on and on and on, and it distorts what we need to do. If you want a common person to come in and look at it, they're going to go, what are you talking about? It really is. If it's lot line to lot line, it's so much easier to go instead of saying, well, we're going lot line to lot line here, and we're going to go this here, we're going to do this here. I want to go back to the original one we said. I said yes to it the last time. I think we should just stay with it. The only thing I like changes is that if they have the facility and a church moves in, I like the D that you put in here. I like that. And I also like the site building things too. I like that for some effect, as we do have a lot of old buildings. But I like to go back to the original one that we had to start out with and just stay there. We already passed the last time, and just add these two sentences and get rid of all this other crap here. It's not what we need. It's just way too much.
And Jennifer could probably explain the scenarios maybe better than I can, but I think the concern with the lot line was people are just going to start splitting off all these lots, and you're going to, that's maybe not ideally what we want either. Is that?
Potentially, but I was responding to some comments from the council meeting prior, where there was some interest in considering some building measurements, because there were a few parcels that were quite large that were clipped by a buffer. So we explored an option where that may be mitigated. Maybe not though, maybe it still won't make sense for any of the potential properties, but this is an option if you're looking for something more complex.
So when we talked about this before, and we talked in terms of basically site condominium lines, that's something that could be defined within a strip mall or within a multi-tenant facility, and that would still be an option.
Yes.
So even if we backed up and said that might be an option they would have to exercise if they were on a otherwise eligible site that happened to have a very small amount of it within a buffer, and that would be something that could be done.
Yes.
And the potential for splitting off a piece of land as a parcel was the other one we thought could be done. Probably not ideal. I understand what you're trying to do here to make it easier. And I think that it would be a problem. I would have a problem if we had a large parcel which was clipped by maybe 5% of the land was within a buffer, therefore the entire parcel is out. I don't think that'd be right. So but when we talked at our work session about these are possibilities that could be accommodated without further change in the text, I think that you and Ron agreed that, well, that's a possibility. We could do it that way. I think that the rest of us kind of nodded and said, yeah, that's a workaround. And so if that would if going back to that workaround would satisfy Mr. Fritz's concern, I'd be willing to do that. If not, then I can also go with this new language. I think it's quite complex, but I do understand it. So I think it's certainly readable. You just have to go through it step by step. So I can go either way on this. And I'll support the zoning amendment with or without this. I recognize the work that the Planning Commission put in over a period of several months. They did a great deal of research. I understand Josh's point when he speaks of potentially overlays. We heard that from one or two other planning commissioners. And for one reason or another, they selected this process and this map, and then we modified it by blocking out even more areas as a mutual concession within our group here to say, well, let's be sensitive to some buffers that the Planning Commission didn't prefer, and that some of us didn't prefer, but some of us did. So I think what we have is a compromise package here. And I'd like to stay in the spirit of compromise to the extent that we can. I also firmly believe that if the city is to take care of its own citizens, we should be able to offer medically prescribed products, medicines within our city that people need. I think that's a service that we should have within the city. As far as, are we legalizing marijuana? Well, that's kind of out of our hands. Medical marijuana passed 12 years ago by 2-to-1 margin in the city, not just in the state. And the more recent recreational marijuana was a smaller margin, and it's really not the issue here because we're talking about the medical side. So I think what we're doing here is a good thing. I think it is a thing which serves people, it gives us regulated facilities, it puts reasonable safeguards in place, and it doesn't otherwise alter a landscape which we might have preferred not be the way it is. But I think it gives us safer facilities, something we have some measure of control over. That, to me, that was the goal. That's where we were going down this road. That's where I want to end up. So I guess my question would be to the group, do we want to, if the only issue here is how we handle these parcels with a little bit of encroachment, is there something we can agree on?
I would support what Monica's offering to go back to the way it was before. Because, I mean, what was trying to be accomplished could be accomplished that way also. And it does make it a little easier.
Do we have can we look at the map? Do we have the map available? Yes. That shows some of the larger parcels where it may, I mean, maybe it's a moot point as it is, like I said, if it's.
If we open up the PDF, we can walk through that map. I looked around the edges of the buffers, and there weren't a lot of parcels that had a very small portion.
Okay, so they're fairly covered.
I think I saw about 8.
8, okay.
8 that are clipped?
Yeah, 8 that had like less than 25% coverage by a buffer. They were big enough to do something else with. I mean, I wasn't real comprehensive, but I did look around the edges.
Just a thought, and maybe it's oversimplifying, and I'm just repeating something that one of our Facebook commenters posted tonight while you've been talking about this, so you never know where an idea might come from. The possibility of having the buffer be from building line to building line in all cases. If the concern is that we want to insulate the sensitive uses from the marijuana uses, and if the actual marijuana use is at the building and the actual sensitive use is at the building, does that compute for any of you that you would go from building line to building line in all cases, whether it's on the same lot, different lots? You know, it could be uniform, and then you don't run into the potential unfair perception where you've got a gigantic lot with you know, a use far on the other side of the lot, but the whole lot's been disqualified because the buffer happens to brush into 10 feet of it. You know, if you went building to building, then
I think we discussed that one time.
I just thought I'd pass that along. It literally came across as a
We've
comment.
already discussed that at one of our work sessions before. I appreciate them bringing that up again, but I think we've already gone past that.
We discussed building, I don't remember. And I just may not recall, I don't remember the
I don't,
discussion on that.
I don't know that there was a lot of discussion, but one concern might be that buildings sometimes can become altered. They might have an addition, they might have a piece taken down.
Sure.
And so you might have a moving target plus some of your activity, your parking, your entry to the building and such are exterior to the building footprint. So I can see where parcel to parcel was a starting point for us. It's what we said. This is how we would typically look at it. And so that's where, I think that what we said was, that's typically how we would look at it, parcel to parcel, and it's simple. Then the possibility does come up that, okay, now you have this rather artificial circular arc of a buffer around the corner of a property, happens to clip some other parcel and make the entire thing ineligible. That's where the discussion went to splitting parcels or having site condominium rules.
Right. And I just would observe that the difficulty we're having now with wrestling with this and the confusion that I think I have a little bit, and I believe that I understand the complexity of this. If we're having complexity as it's being drafted, you can imagine, should it become a litigious issue, and what some attorneys could make of this type of language could be a daunting challenge for us if we're on the challenge side of this thing, given our interpretation. If we interpret it a certain way and somebody disagrees with us, the more words you use, the more you open yourself up for.
That's fair.
I think that's part of the concern about having 4 new paragraphs included.
Exactly.
That's a very fair argument.
I think the best way is to go back to what we originally talked about, just property line to property line,
And just add those two, delete the one and then add the D.
Well, and I think that we still have the options we've discussed all along for somebody to alter their property, correct?
That's correct.
They can.
But does that satisfy your concerns?
If they want to do that, and they have that opportunity to do that.
I
So
mean,
it's
as
up
far
to
as
them.
setting this aside.
Setting that aside, I don't.
Okay.
I just want to go back to what we originally, I voted for that, and I was pretty well set with it. The only thing I would like to add now would be D and the site and building placement standards crossed off.
Do we need an amendment to this original, or is this just something we can change it by discussion here?
Make a motion? We have to make a motion, or just,
Good question.
it was original?
We brought it back as, we probably should amend the text to include these two, striking paragraph 9 and adding paragraph 3D.
So for subsection C, it would say buffers shall generally be measured from the nearest lot line of the lot proposed for the medical marijuana facility to the nearest lot line of any of the above sensitive land uses.
Correct, and that's what we had previously.
Yes.
Okay,
Then we'd be adding D and striking
All right.
9. Okay.
so would somebody like to offer that amendment?
I'll make that amendment.
I'll second it.
Okay. We have a motion by Fritz and second by Cummins to amend the text that we had previously voted by adding 43A, B, 3, D,
D,
striking line 9.
striking line 9, adding D. And C goes back to the original.
Yes. Questions on?
You got that all figured out now?
Linda looks like she's digging. Linda, are you ready with that?
I'm just trying to make sure we got the right thing here.
They're striking that, or they're...
Striking that. Okay, this is motion to amend, and I'll work on the specific wording, but basically amending the text to what it was previously worded, but add D D that was on the sheet that Jennifer handed out tonight, and striking line
No.
9 that's already suggested in
No.
The one that's in our packet.
Those are very different Ds.
Yeah, okay.
Just ignore what I gave you tonight.
All right.
The motion would be going back to where buffers shall be measured from the nearest lot line of the lot proposed for the medical marijuana facility to the nearest lot line of any of the above sensitive land uses. That's what we go back to. Then we'll add, if a medical marijuana facility is located in compliance with all applicable minimum separation distances, and then a sensitive land use is subsequently located within any applicable minimal separation distance, the medical marijuana facility is not thereby rendered non-compliant with this subsection 3. Then we'll strike out line 9, which is site and building placement standards and building form standards of the applicable district shall be met. We'll strike that one out.
Okay, so we're striking under C the, however, if the proposed medical marijuana facility would be located, we're getting rid of all that.
Yes.
Yes.
Forget what Jennifer handed out.
Okay.
Nice work, though.
Nice work.
Yeah, thank you.
Very thoughtful.
Okay. Cummins?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Fritz?
Yes.
Dora?
Yes.
Manetza?
Yes. All right, so now we have amended the text of the zoning amendment. Is there any reason to discuss any further, or have we discussed it thoroughly? We ready to vote?
I'm ready.
I think we're ready to vote on the main motion.
Scott?
No.
Fritz?
Yes.
Dora?
Yes.
Cummins?
Yes.
Manetza?
Yes. All right. So that was the zoning piece. Next item.
Next item is to approve an introductory resolution amending Chapter 9.5, Business Regulations, Article 4, Marijuana Establishments of the City of Grand Haven Code of Ordinances.
Okay, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Commons,
Second.
second by Dora. Now, this was postponed from our January 20th meeting following a public hearing. So it comes back to us in that form, but we have since extensively reworked the ordinance itself, so we would amend what we had entertained before by replacing it with this new text.
Motion on that?
I think for formalities, we would make a motion to amend.
I'll make that motion.
To this. I'll second it.
Okay, motion by Cummins, second by Dora to amend the original text of this regulatory ordinance by replacing it with the version that's in our packet tonight. This was also the subject of a lengthy work session on the 27th of January, in which we discussed a variety of provisions that are in this regulatory piece. The purpose of this regulatory piece is to establish the rules and processes by which permits would be evaluated and granted and ultimately executed so that the facilities could operate within the city. So, Pat, do you have anything that you'd like to share on this?
I think just to give you assurances that some of the things that you discussed at that lengthy work session were addressed. The new ordinance at page 6 does require a good neighbor plan. It also has no limits on the number of commercial facilities except for provisioning centers, which are limited to 4. And those numbers can be adjusted in the future by simple council resolution. Fee would be set by council resolution, which, should this ordinance get adopted, we would plan on having the fee set immediately following adoption. And we're planning on recommending the $5,000, which is allowed by state law. The odor controls are required on pages 5 and 6. Odor enforcement is possible if there's an unreasonable nuisance. And then a good deal of redundant and unnecessary language we went through very carefully with some help, and took all of the things out that we were proposing in the ordinance that were already covered in the state law. And so our enforcement or state or other enforcement would be able to use the state law, so we wouldn't need to repeat it. It would be just extra words. We don't really need it in our ordinance to cover the same thing that's already covered in the state law. And I verified every one of those and did find that they were in the state law, so I think we gave you everything you talked about, and if there's more, we're happy to make additional changes, and tonight you're being asked to introduce.
I do have a question on 9.5-44C, under where it says amount. It says permitted by the license or the permit. I don't believe we specified any amount, did we? On the permit?
Well, a grower could have a certain class, probably, right? You would have a class of how much you could grow. So if it's specified in the license that they're a Class C grower, then they would only be able to have up to that amount, but.
But I don't think we specified anything for anyone else. If it's fine like it is. That was the only question I had.
Yeah, we didn't call it out, but I believe it is called out in the state rules.
Okay.
So I guess this probably isn't totally necessary, but I don't think it hurts us either.
Yeah.
That's fair.
That was the only question I had on it. I just didn't recall us calling anything out.
So the language here, says that, staff will set the dates, times to kind of open this up. Set a period of time to be accepting, applications. I mean, when do we anticipate this period, happening? I know we need to set a fee, or look at the fee resolution. We would want that in place certainly before we start accepting any potential applications, but do we have a timeline we're thinking, or are we,
I was backtracking the dates based on if you were to approve each of these as early as you could. And we're looking at mid to late April as a potential application acceptance start date. And then based on reviewing those applications, then we would set a lottery date that was appropriate.
Just curious. I think we've come a really long way on this regulatory ordinance. I think we have a good regulatory framework that's in front of us for these types of businesses. I think we all like things in it, don't like things in it. That's the nature of compromise, but I'm hopeful that these regulations will address some of the concerns that some folks have. I think as Mike observed out in Unica, there may not be as many problems as some folks are thinking we may have, but we have a good regulatory framework in place, or hopefully put a good regulatory framework in place that oversees the zoning that we just passed. So that's all I have.
Okay.
My main concern was odor control. Everything else in it came along pretty good on it, so that seems to, hopefully it'll take care of it.
I think that it gives you a process to take care of it anyway.
Yeah.
Instead of just saying, can't have any, it describes what you have to do.
So voting on now the amendment itself, okay.
Yeah, we've taken what we had way back in January and said, no, this is what we have now. So now we're discussing this text and preparing to vote on this for an introductory resolution.
Okay. Okay.
Any comments?
No, I'm good.
Okay, Mike, anything else?
No, this is first reading, so.
It's first reading. Much delayed, but the first reading, yes.
Yeah, so, it's delayed, but yeah, it's coming.
It's coming. And I have really no further comment either. We talked about this a lot in our work session. I think you've covered most of the concerns I had. Again, it's a fairly complex piece of regulation, but it's intended to guide us through this process, and we're taking careful steps. So, I have no further comments. I believe we're ready to vote.
And this was on to make the amendment?
This is to vote on it as.
We've already voted correct me if I'm wrong, haven't we already voted to replace the original?
I had a motion and second. I don't have a vote for it.
Oh, okay. So we just moved straight into the discussion then?
Mm-hmm.
Well, discussion on the amendment.
All right, then let's vote to amend the ordinance to replace it with this. I thought we had done that.
Fritz?
Yes.
Dora?
Yes.
Cummins?
Yes.
Manetza?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
I'm pretty sure I remember him voting yes on that.
That was on the last one.
That was the last one.
Yeah.
All right, so now I think we're ready to vote on the main motion.
Okay. Dora?
Yes.
Cummins?
Yes.
Scott?
No.
Fritz?
Yes.
Manetza?
Yes. All right. So we will take this up again at our next meeting for a second reading. Okay. I believe that is our last item of business. So, report by City Council. Who would like to go first? Anybody?
Oh, yeah, I'll go. Attended the Historic Conservation District Commission meeting on the depot renovation and some of the items that had to be completed for renting out some of the space. And I think that went pretty good. Everybody came to a consensus, and I think some new doors are probably on the way, and some other changes that have to be made. So I think that's a step in the right direction. I'm looking forward to meeting with Amy on her budget proposals, as we had talked about. Other than that, learning a lot.
Okay. Having fun, right?
Yep.
Said I'm just coming back from Florida, so I'm still at vacation.
Okay.
brain
Yeah,
somewhat,
vacation
so,
mode.
you
How's
know,
Florida?
Yeah, it was fantastic. Beautiful warm weather. Hit up Key West while I was down there, down in Palm Beach. Saw Air Force One while I was down there. So just quickly comment on you know, really what we're looking at would be, you know, user-paid parking. I just, you know, myself, at least my approach to this is at least, you know, I know there were a lot of comments tonight. You know, I hope everybody can kind of keep an open mind as the discussion, you know, begun, you know, was started at a staff level. You know, the DDA board has looked at this, and then hopefully we have, you know, some open-minded discussion at least on where we're at. I think there's a lot to consider here. The reality is that parking isn't free now. There's somebody paying for it, and that's our property taxpayers. They're paying for the maintenance of the lots. We don't have any money for future replacement, which is a significant cost that we're looking at in the future. You know, we do want some continued investments downtown and along our waterfront, and there may be some parking issues with that. And the points related to some zoning changes and looking at some of the amount of spaces, I think those all need to be looked at as well. So I think we need to be open to all ideas. You know, if folks ultimately don't want, you know, an actual, you know, user-paid parking. You know, we got to look at, you know, where that funding's really coming from and just have that real discussion. So I hope we can all at least stay open-minded, hear all of the feedback that's coming in, all the ideas that are coming in, and have a good, rich discussion, good community engagement process through it, and then make a well-informed decision. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I kind of got blindsided by the parking thing. I went to a coffee clutch that we have, and they hit me up with it, and I had no idea that it was even discussion, so I got blindsided by the whole thing. So, but anyways, when I worked for the city, they had a special assessment. The people downtown, the businesses pay a special assessment for the parking lots. That also covered snow removal, and it also covered the parking lots and part of the streets. And it was a special assessment that was assessed, like I said, on the businesses downtown. Someplace between, and I think it happened probably when Larry Beecham was here, but I'm not sure because I'm sure Darrell Taven was the one that implemented that back in about '68 or so. But anyways, I remember discussion. Some of the businesses down there discussed privatizing some of the plowing there because the city was charging what they were charging, and it got to be kind of a debate if the city should keep plowing it or or if they wanted to, the DVDDA wanted to do it themselves, but the city always did plow it, so, but someplace along the line, they lost that special assessment. And special assessment, like I said, it covered the maintenance of the parking lot, it covered everything on them. I mean, and now, all that burden's on the city taxpayer. So it's, when you pay your taxes, you're paying for the maintenance downtown, and you're paying for the for the maintenance of the parking lot, and, you know, as part of the snow removal that we've done with snow melt, we've just absorbed that. And there's no special assessment anymore to cover that. So it'll be a good discussion. I'm not sure paid parking is the way to go. I really don't know how to go with it, but someplace, the taxpayers of Grand Haven are paying for the maintenance of all that down there, and if that's the way we elect to go, I guess that's what we'll do. But I think we need to get into discussion with that and find out exactly what we should do with that. It's not free to maintain those parking lots. I mean, we stripe them, we seal coat them. When they need to be replaced, we replace them, all with taxpayer money. Yep. So it's something we need to look at and get a discussion about it. I'm not sure exactly what the remedy is going to be for it, but if the taxpayers want to keep paying it, but it's a discussion I think we need to have. I think we need to open up to the public, and I think we need to hear from them too, the taxpayers in Grand Haven. And I'm all for it. I think that discussion is long overdue.
I agree.
Done? Yes, it's all yours.
Yeah, I do remember the special assessment because being an Eagle member, the parking lot across the street from the Eagles over there, we were assessed for that for many years. I don't know when it stopped. I can have him check. I can have my brother check the records and see when it happened, Denny. Right. But doesn't downtown merchants pay 2% more? Pat, does downtown merchants pay 2% more on their taxes?
They have a 2 mil levy to support the MSDDA, yeah.
Yeah. Wasn't that supposed to go for all that also, part of that?
No, that was never used for maintaining parking lots. Not since I've been here, we've never gotten any of that revenue. That just covers that DDA budget.
Okay.
I'm happy to discuss that, though.
But there was Denny's actually correct. There was a special assessment, because I know my brother telling me how much they had to pay, the Eagles had to pay, just for that parking lot across the street. They were assessed for that. But it's going to be quite a discussion for me, because I'm not in favor of paid parking anywhere, to be honest with you. It's a small community, and we want to keep it that way, and we want to make sure we have tourists here, and if you want to do something, then I have to agree with half the businesses owners down there. But anyways, I did attend, on another note, now that I'm off in that, I did attend the Parks and Rec Board, and as you noticed earlier, I was there when they discussed both items that were on tonight, and that is actually a great board. They put a lot of work into their work. They asked a lot of questions when it came down to each time. That's why they made the Fiesta come back the second time, because they couldn't get the answers they wanted. They told them, please attend our meeting, and they did show up, and they answered all the questions. So I want to give kudos out to the Parks and Rec Board for doing their homework and working very hard. And I did come in for the last 15 minutes. I just made it in time for the same one for the depot there, to see what they were picking for the doors and that, which I approved. Same thing. I thought it was a good selection down there. Other than that, it would be nice if we had some icebergs out there to protect the shoreline a little more, but that's nothing I can do about it. So, and I also noticed that down in Antarctica, there was 65 degrees down there. So if it's global warming, I mean, it's when it's supposed to be super, super cold, it's 65 degrees, and pieces of huge masses of ice and falling off and going in. So we do have global warming, people believe it or not. It's there, and I don't think we're going to see much change. That's all I have to say.
Okay, well, thank you. Yeah, just quickly on the paid parking, I think there's been a couple of really relevant comments here. People do need to understand that there really is no free parking. You may not be paying for it directly, but somebody's paying for it. And if you want it to be more parking, better parking, different parking, even just repaired parking, it's being paid for by somebody. And if you want it to be expanded beyond anything that it is today. There'll have to be a source of revenue figured out for that. Paid parking is a user fee, so it's a possibility. Special assessment's a possibility. It's something that I think, and I asked Pat to come up with some kind of a order of magnitude type of what a special assessment would look like today to cover costs, and I think that'll be quite an interesting number as well. So we will follow up on this discussion. It won't just die. It won't be ignored. The input of the people will be heard, and at some point in time, I think we'll have to make a decision on how we're going to fund downtown parking now in the future and under changing conditions. So I'm not taking a position beyond that. I was at the DDA meeting. I understand that they did vote to move along the paid parking committee's ideas to us, and they recommended that we follow up on it. And so we will come up with a process to gather public input so we can have a good informed decision. I also was involved in some of the Historic Conservation District meeting for talking about depot changes. I think that they are being very cautious and very careful and trying to preserve the building to the extent that they can and still have a usable building. And I wanted to point out to everyone that later this week on Thursday there will be a joint meeting of the Board of Light and Power and the City Council. It'll be a work session type meeting following the regular BLP meeting. And so that will be something that we should have some interesting conversation. And that's all I've got. City Manager's report.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just appreciate your patience. You know, I'm not going to apologize for Grand Haven Informed. It's a Facebook page where there's an awful lot of excitement about a lot of things sometimes, and there was an inaccurate post posted that got a lot of feedback going with very little information out there for people to really chew on. So I do think that and I can't prepare myself or you for some of that sudden response when there's this 24-hour constant onslaught of opinion based on opinion. But you know, looking at the long run, the idea is to try to bring solutions forward and options for City Council today to try to solve tomorrow's problems before they really become super big problems. And sometimes that can be a little unnerving for people, but these might be things that may never happen. It might happen in the short term or the long term, but the studies we've had have said you ought to be looking at these things. So that's all we're doing, and we were very clear about that on the discussion committee we had, that we're not making a recommendation. We're just saying, if Grand Haven had paid parking, what are some of the concerns? And everything we've heard, everything that I read, and all of those comments on Grand Haven Informed have been discussed and have been recognized as potential challenges that we need to address before we'd consider implementing anything like that in the future. So, you know, good, thoughtful policy takes a long time to consider and work through, and it could be this council, it could be some future council, but it's good to start the discussion and not wait until your back's against the wall, your infrastructure's crumbling, and you haven't had those discussions. So I'm glad that we're able to have those and do some engagement. We can do some outreach, but I think our next course would be to do some of that engagement, informing the broader population of what's been discussed and why, and then come back to council with some options. Here's a variety of things. Here's what the costs look like in the future. Here's where the current revenues are, and here's what we see the demand being. And it sure is easier when you get years in front of it rather than, as you've experienced with infrastructure, when you wait until it's already a gigantic problem and then you say, boy, I wish you would have wrestled with this one before today. So I think we're just starting the discussion today, as has been recommended by all the studies we've done, that we ought to keep these discussions going. And it's no fun for me. You know, this is just what we need to do. We need to make, you know, it's not always easy, but revenue has to come from somewhere. And so it's my job to present you with all the options that are out there and then let you make the tough decisions. So that's all I had on that topic.
All right, well, thank you. All right, we are to our second call to the audience. This time, members of the audience may address council on any item, or whether on the agenda or not. Those addressing council will come to the podium, speak directly to the mayor, identify yourself by name and address, be limited to 3 minutes of speaking time. Council will hear all comments for future consideration, will not have a response at this time. Anyone?
Jerry McCaleb, 1235 Slayton. Just a couple things. I was fascinated by all the people that had come out about the parking issue. And if there is, I was talking to a little, you know, a millennial age person that was visiting our area just the other day, and he said he'd rather walk 3 blocks to avoid using his app on his phone for parking. So I think if there are different ways to approach this, I think that all possibilities have not probably been explored. So there's always that. I know what the purpose of the parking is really not, you know, to soak the tourists. It's really looking at future development, and I think that that's something very important that the city council needs to look at. Is just how exactly you want to go about it is the question. And on the other thing, I'm just extremely disappointed that you took the easy way out on the marijuana thing. And Denny, Mr. Scott, I appreciate your strong stand on this because it's very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
I also want to thank Denny Scott for what you said, because we do know that there is a lot of harm that can come down the road to our youth, their brains, and suicides. We're already concerned about suicides here. I came from Colorado. Suicides is big in the schools because of marijuana.
Joan Query from Lake Avenue again. I want to thank you for this evening for your collaborative and respectful problem solving on both listening with the parking issues, the waterfront issues, and also the medical marijuana provisioning, the 2 ordinances. There's real good thinking and research that I know that you've done for this. And as we move forward with what the language now is that you voted on, I would ask our city staff and all of you to always say to yourself, would you want to live next door to one of the grow and provisioning places? And let's make these few places the best possible that they can be. Because if you can't answer that I would live next door to one of these places and be proud to live next door. If you can't answer that question, then you need to go back to the language in the ordinances and look at it again. I'm hoping that as we move forward, I am not calling Jennifer Howland and Officer Handy asking for help on Lake Avenue, that the property owners have increased their production so that they're going to supply the few places that you're going to allow to go into business. Because believe me, if that production increases this summer and I and my family and everyone else is vaporized again, I'm going to be down here saying, please help. I don't know what's in the chemicals in these vapors that are coming into my house and blanketing my family. That same thing could happen to you. So that's why I ask, whatever we do, say, could I live next door to this? And if your answer is yes, then we've got the language in place. But if your answer is no, that you wouldn't want to live next door to this, then you got to look at some language that helps the citizens. So, yep, thank you very much. It was a respectful evening this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike Weaver, 637 Lake Avenue, and no, it's not me, right, Joan? Even though, so just wanted to make sure that's the case.
Are you her neighbor?
So anyways, in regards to marijuana, I think you made the right decision. I did a lot of research before the first vote for medical marijuana because I was curious. And I was surprised that cigarettes were substantially more deadly than marijuana ever could be. So that was my deciding factor at that point. But anyways, in my opinion, well, I shouldn't say my opinion, I've done my research, but it's substantially safer than many of the pharmaceutical drugs that are pushed to relieve the same conditions that marijuana alleviates for substantially less money. It's better than opioids. It's better than alcohol. I know people who are dead from opioids. I know people who have been injured and killed by drunk drivers. So marijuana is actually a fairly easygoing, we'll call it, drug. I have a good friend who has MS, and he should have been in a wheelchair 10 years ago. And he never looked better when I saw him 2 years ago, and I asked him what the difference was. And he said, it's because I can now smoke marijuana. And he says, the pain through the day is the same, but he goes, I can at least sleep at night. And since this has become legal in our state, more people that I didn't know use it. They basically use it as a bit of a sedative to get through the night. And that some of them, it's just they have chronic pain as they've aged, and obviously I'm getting older too. So that's the age group, quite frankly, I think that's using it more than anybody is ours. I also know people that use it for cancer to alleviate the pain. Having lost a sister and a mother, I'd want them to have that option. I don't want them to have to go to Kalamazoo. I don't want them to go to Muskegon Heights. And I don't think they should even have to drive to Nunica. And it's wonderful. That's actually a facility that's been around for a little while, is my understanding. And I saw news reports that people were coming from Greenville to that facility. So, Denny, you can talk about your one incident and maybe more. I get it. I don't know what the condition of your son is today. Hopefully he's doing well and thriving. But I can tell you that I know enough people on the other side of the aisle that use it and use it well. They're not stoners. They're not. It gets them through the night so they can actually live another productive day. So I think you made the right decision. We won't. Also, I know a lot of people. I shouldn't say a lot, but if people use it just for anxiety. In regards to paid parking, it's as foolish as a parking structure. Walk away. Get away from this. It keeps sneaking up from behind. It's not the citizens who are asking for it. It's always, from what I can tell, a very select, small core group that's gets to manipulate things behind the scenes. Let's expose them and let's get this over with, because I'm sick of listening. I see my 3 minutes are up. I'll wrap it up. Snow melt system is going to cost the downtown people, from what I can tell, 2.5 times more per year. And our tax rate, when you talk about charging for us to park in our own town, our tax rate, since the city manager has come to our town, has gone from 30 mils to 36 mils per thousand. So our tax rate's gone up 20%. Not our just true taxes as our properties of value, our tax rate. That's unheard of. So for you to actually sit here and tell us that we need to pay even more is just wrong. So stop wasting money, spend it the right way. We don't have to do all these silly things that you guys like to do sometimes. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you.
Good evening, council members. Senator Arlen Meekoff, 12596 Retreat Drive. Just want to compliment you all on your process of bringing together the zoning ordinances for medical marijuana. Excuse me. My staff and I, when I was in office, worked on this extensively, the medical marijuana. And because I'm probably the only one here that can stand up for the legislature, there was a comment made about why pharmacists weren't allowed to do the prescribing of medical marijuana. In their oath, it says to do no harm. And they do not know, if it's prescribed with any other drug, what the effects are. So they will not prescribe it on purpose if they're true to their oath. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jamie Cooper, 1386 Taylor. It was about a year ago that I stood here and asked you guys to talk about medical marijuana, and so I really want to thank you for putting in the work. I know it hasn't been easy. There's been arguments. There's been a ton of research, and I just thank you for doing the right thing for the people on behalf of the 4,000 patients and caregivers in Ottawa County that no longer have to drive to Muskegon. They don't have to drive to Kalamazoo. Thank you. The great thing about, we have a very regulated law, and I think that the ordinances that you have put together is a good ordinance for our community. And I think that you will make the community proud with this, and it will help
build that trust, and hopefully down the road that we can drop some of these buffers that I don't think are necessary. But the fact that we are doing this is a really great thing. There are cancer patients in our community that will be able to benefit from delivery from these provisioning centers. They won't even have to leave their home, and they're going to be able to get something that's going to help them. I lost my father of pancreatic cancer. It was about 3 years ago, right around this time. I was in Texas, and he was using it illegally, and it was the only thing that made him want to eat. And when you witness that, when you see that, that's why I am so passionate about this, because I don't think that anyone should ever have to feel bad about using this to help their own lives. So thank you.
Thank you.
Rebecca Neal, 1644 Franklin Avenue. I too want to thank you guys. I know this has not been the easiest process, but I want you to know that you've seriously set precedents on these laws in this community and in this county. We need this precedence, because in the meantime we have so much propaganda that, I mean, this has been so long of prohibition. I think we need to recognize that the drug laws have done us no good, and it's about time we start looking at changing how our drug laws and it is really created something that this will create change, and it will be profound. It's going to set a dialogue. It's going to set new change, and we need to recognize that this is where we're going, and culturally we need to accept how this is going to be implemented into our communities, and why I think these buffers, weren't in the best of interest. But I just think this is good. This is where we want to start, and so I'm glad you guys have done this for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mary Shaheen, 1159 South Harbor. Mr. Fritz, you talked about representing the 44%, and something I thought about, maybe it would represent the 44% by not making the cannabis facilities, not giving it the name of cannabis, and not having big billboards that say where to buy cannabis, because all the people for medical marijuana have a license for it, and they can be sent notices in the mail where the facility is. I don't mean to make the facility look like some, closed down facility. I mean, make it open and stuff, but not give it such a, don't advertise it, give it a different name. And like some people use American Meds or Med this or something, and that's my recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. If no one else wishes to approach council, I will adjourn this meeting. Thank you for coming.